Chapter 261, Stubborn Mouth. When the Shijanhao, the practice vessel, was launched, Li Wei saved its construction template and labeled it Practice Class. That would make future builds far easier. But for now he remained the only one in all the lands who could assemble such a flagship. Others were still learning and had not reached his level. Gandalf stood below watching the completed hull, his gaze tracing the pillar of light that stabbed up into the sky. "It's comparable to the largest ships I remember, and even more exquisite," he murmured. Li Wei had insisted every practice-class vessel carry at least one beacon. In effect, they were enormous, mobile bastions. The sight stirred memories in the old wizard. "The last time I saw a ship this large," Gandalf began, then fell silent. A shadow passed over his face. "That ship sank. Its throne and the realm that owned it sank with it." Círdan, standing nearby, understood at once. He knew the story Gandalf meant. Alcarandas, the sea bastion, the flagship Ar-Pharazôn took when he dared attack Valinor. Everyone knew what became of a fleet that attacked the Blessed Realm. Númenor itself was drowned. "You must trust Li Wei," Círdan said softly. Gandalf shook himself. "I trust him. I was only having a thought." He quickly added, "But it's a good thing after all." News of the practice vessel spread fast. It reached even distant Gondor, and when the messenger returned with details, many of the court's higher officials felt a sudden chill. Turgon quelled the more ambitious schemes rising among his advisors. "Open the port of Pelargir and allow the fleets of the free city-states to pass," he ordered. An objection was raised, but Turgon cut it off with a single decisive question. If he had other designs, would he need to resort to plots? The hall fell silent. Later, Turgon, thin and weary, returned to his chamber and penned a letter. He meant to send goodwill and gifts from Gondor to the newly established port cities and to the free cities, to show they welcomed this development rather than feared it. In the spring of 2952, a messenger rode out with the royal letter and its accompanying gifts. He rode west toward the Misty Mountains, but when he reached the riverside stronghold, he was told the lord he sought was not there. He was sent on to Roadside Fort and found the same answer. "No one knows where our lord is," the villagers said. "Don't be angry. This is how he is." So the messenger waited in Roadside Fort, but Li Wei was not far away. While Gondor's envoy turned west, Li Wei had been riding east. On the Old South Road, Li Wei was ambushed by a band of locals dressed in animal furs and carrying axes and spears, the men of Harad. They stepped from the bushes with rough faces and rougher manners. "What are you looking at?" Li Wei asked. "We were hunting, just passing through," the leader stammered, though their eyes watched him like wolves watching a deer. "You look more like men who would do something foul," Li Wei said, dismounting and standing before them. The leader's bravado broke under Li Wei's gaze. He sweat and finally admitted, "Lord Saruman told us to watch for travelers in this area. We never meant to attack anyone. Honest." "Saruman?" Li Wei repeated. "And you didn't think to say so until I asked?" "I swear it true," the man blurted. "I was about to go find him and tell him what you said." "Good," Li Wei said. "Go back. Do not loiter here again." They hurried away. Li Wei mounted and rode on to Isengard, to the iron gates of Orthanc. The lake was clear, the trees green, and the sky high and blue. The tower itself stood unchanged, but the face that peered from its windows was not pleasant. "Open up, Saruman." Li Wei knocked until the stone groaned. It took a while, but a voice called down, "Enough, I am coming." Saruman opened the gate, pretending annoyance. "I thought you were not here." "I am here," Li Wei said. "My doorman was called away at the same moment yours was." "Funny, isn't it?" Saruman's smile was thin. "A coincidence. So what brings the great shipbuilder of Riverbend to Orthanc?" Saruman led him up and set a pot of tea. He poured a cup that smelled of Roadside Fort. Li Wei sipped. "You have good taste in tea," he observed. "Even you, Saruman the White, cannot deny a wise palate when he sees one." Saruman did not answer. The tea had come from the Roadside Fort merchants, not from any deeper source. Li Wei dropped the pleasantries. "I didn't come for tea. I came for an item in your tower." Saruman's eyes narrowed. "What item?" "The Star of Arundel." For a moment, Saruman's face hardened into something like a mask. "I don't know what you mean," he said. "No need to pretend. I know it's here." Saruman's hand tightened around his teacup until the porcelain creaked. For 1,000 years, no one had known the gem was here. The secret chamber's key had been kept, and the doorway was warded. No ordinary thief, not even a ringwraith, could have entered. Saruman had kept quiet about it, and now Leeway's knowledge made no sense. "How did you learn it was here?" he demanded. "I guessed," Leeway said simply. That answer made Saruman's fingers go rigid. "It's not with me. You are crazy to say so." "It is with you," Leeway countered. "It is not." "It is. I said it is not," Saruman snapped. "I said it is." "Enough. I'm not here to rob you." Leeway set his cup down. "Name your price. I will take it with me." At that, the pretense fell from Saruman. His expression changed. Some of the old warmth returned, if only for the theater of it. "Since you put it that way," he said, speaking as if to a guest, "I suppose I must tell you the long and painful tale of how I came to preserve it." The story began, and Orthanc listened. "Thanks to you guess, I guess you step on, I guess you guess not guess, score, ek for the 100-point reward. Thanks to Huar Geyer for the 100-point reward, and thanks to all who voted." Chapter 262, Star of Elendil. Hardship? Leeway bristled at the word. Saruman's so-called search for Isildur's body had never been noble. From the moment news spread of Isildur's death and the loss of the One Ring, Saruman's thought was possession, not purification. The White Wizard wanted the ring for himself. He did not set out to find and destroy it, so when he came upon the Star of Elendil, he concealed it instead of announcing it. Even if the treasure belonged to the Dunedain and was only found by chance, it was a rare magical relic and fit for a private collection. Its significance to the Rangers and to all who fought for Middle-earth's freedom was of no consequence to him. If some research project demanded the star, Saruman would have engraved or exploited it without a second thought. "The hardship you speak of, do you mean you happened upon the star while looking for something else, then hid a thing that belongs to others?" Leeway asked. "Some things are better left unsaid." Saruman visibly bristled. A hint of his old temper sharpened his voice, and he tried to weave a spell sound into his words. The room dimmed as if a cloud passed over the sun, and a thunderous undertone echoed through the tower. "I merely found this gem in the river valley by accident. I had no other design. Your accusations are empty speculation, unsupported by fact." "Don't try that with me." Leeway waved a hand. The shadow in the room faded, and Saruman's echoing spell broke apart. Where Saruman's voice might have swayed an ordinary man, a weak-willed Dunedain, or even some young elf, it had no hold on Leeway now. He might have been susceptible when he first arrived in this world. Then he had been fragile and ordinary, but not now. Not with the rune shield at his back and the legends that clung to him. Even Saruman's magical persuasion could not take root. Surprise and irritation flitted across Saruman's face. He took several deep breaths and forced a calm mask back on. "Let us be practical," he said, changing the subject. "Assume you are young and rash." Leeway casually dismissed the insult with a shrug. Saruman pretended not to hear the taunt. He had no choice. He had overreached. Either he had misapplied his power or he had been openly aggressive. A less restrained man might already have drawn his sword. "Speak. How will you agree to return the Star of the North?" "Before we talk ownership," Saruman replied, "you must acknowledge this. Had I not found and preserved it, it would have fallen into worse hands." Leeway nodded once. Of course Saruman would say that. If Saruman truly intended to return it, there would be no hiding in the first place. "I don't deny that your safekeeping kept it out of other people's hands," Leeway conceded, "but it should be returned to its rightful owner now." "What do you want?" Saruman asked, moving to negotiation. He thought of Leeway's lands, strange treasures and inventions, the wealth and magical items shared by the dwarves of the Lonely Mountain, the enchanted gear and healing draughts of Leeway's soldiers, the hidden relics of his domain. There was, above all, the so-called beacon, an artifact that emitted a steady beam of healing power, a power said capable of arresting the decline of elves and bestowing various enhancements on those nearby: speed, strength, greater resilience. That beacon alone might be worth more than the Star of Elendil to someone like Saruman. If Leeway asked for things rarer than a beacon, Saruman might balk, but a star he had already found? Perhaps negotiable. "I hear you have a miraculous item in your territory called a beacon," Saruman said. "I want one." "All right." Leeway didn't hesitate. Saruman's greed brightened. I also heard you possess a strength potion, one your soldiers seldom use. Could you spare some? Li Wei added. Indeed, Saruman admitted it readily. Strength potions required flame powder, a rare ingredient that couldn't be brewed for everyone. The potions were precious. How many do you want? Li Wei asked. Saruman raised a hand and held up 3 fingers. Li Wei's face fell. That many? Saruman's brows lifted as if offended. Do you think the heirloom treasures of the Northern Kingdom are to be traded for so little? Li Wei cut him off. 30 bottles? Are you drinking water? I only brought 6 bottles with me. Take it or leave it. Saruman's mouth went dry for a moment. He had only meant to ask for 3. He swallowed and then bargained, grudgingly. 6 bottles will do. Then it's settled, Li Wei agreed. Very well. Saruman smiled, though it was thin. Together they rose and headed toward the secret chamber. As they walked, Saruman's eyes kept flicking back, his thoughts racing. He tried to appear casual, like a tavern keeper offering roasted meat and ale, but inside he was chafing. Li Wei had asked for far too little. The Star of Elendil was worth more. At the door to the inner vault, Saruman came to a halt. I believe, perhaps some aspects of our agreement are unreasonable, he said. The Star of Elendil is of higher value. Oh. Li Wei arched one brow, amusement in his voice. So you're backing out? Backing out? Not at all, Saruman hedged, only suggesting we reconsider. Then what if I don't? Li Wei took a step forward. You will never see that gem again. Saruman spread his arms. You must remember, this door is strong. Without my permission, no one, no other wizard, no even more powerful being can open it. That's not necessarily true. Li Wei narrowed his eyes. Saruman, this is my last warning. Give me the Star of Elendil and don't try any tricks. He drew his sword. If you want it, you'll have to take it. Saruman pulled out his black staff and planted himself in the doorway, refusing to yield. For a moment the two faced each other in the narrow corridor between the tower's spiral stairs and the vault's iron door, an old wizard with the weight of a world of schemes behind him, and a young warrior who moved like lightning and bore a golden rune shield. Then chaos erupted. A dark-cloaked figure suddenly burst from the high tower, vaulted onto a waiting horse, and spurred it westward with a shout. Thief! Robber! Bandit! A white-robed voice cried after him, but the rider was already gone, blending into the dusk. Saruman staggered back, covering the right side of his face with one hand, breathless and shaken. He had been reckless. A wizard in flowing robes had chosen to engage a swift, armored warrior in cramped quarters, and that warrior had a curious golden shield that made close magic difficult. With the distance so short, Saruman had had no time to weave the counterspell that would have stopped the bolt. The Star of Elendil had been snatched in the confusion. At that moment, the attendant Saruman had sent away returned. He bowed, then stepped forward and presented what he had brought, a wooden barrel and several crates of goods placed carefully at his feet. My lord, I have brought what you asked for, he said. Move them into the storeroom, Saruman ordered, still holding his face. Yes, my lord. The attendant stepped back to fetch help, but his eyes lingered on Saruman's face, taking in the pallor and the traces of strain. My lord, your face, he began. Silence. Saruman's voice snapped like a whip. He straightened and fixed the man with a fierce glare. Ask about things you must not ask again, and I will have you tied up and thrown into the river. Saruman's greed had done him in. It was a bitter lesson, and a costly one. Still, Li Wei hadn't been the thief Saruman screamed about. Their clash had been a sparring match, and Li Wei had left Saruman with the things the wizard wanted. At worst, it had been a forced but fair transaction. Had it turned into a true battle, Saruman's sorcery might have put him on even terms. Magic like his was not to be underestimated, but there were no ifs to be had. Outside the tall tower, Saruman snorted, hugged his beacon, and retreated to his private rooms to brood and tinker. Li Wei, meanwhile, rode back, clutching a white, star-shaped gem, reminiscent of the fabled Nether Star. No sooner had he returned than the Gondorian messenger who had come bearing a letter pushed through the gate, seeking him out and handing the sealed missive directly into his hands. The signature at the bottom was unmistakable. Turgon. You've worked hard. Give my regards to your prime minister, the messenger said with a small bow. Before leaving the city, the messenger lingered at the gate to cast a last look over the place. This lord's realm was unlike most. There was no ostentatious luxury, yet wealth showed everywhere in subtle ways. Money mattered little here. What mattered were the works of skill and talent, the bas-reliefs carved on common stone, the straightforward paintings in the gallery. Even a royal messenger received no special favors. Everything ran on merit and labor. Strangers were treated like neighbors rather than outcasts. It was a good place, but home still called. He mounted his horse and rode back toward Gondor. Inside the castle, Li Wei opened Turgon's letter. As with Ecthelian's correspondence, the formalities were familiar, so much like father and son. Then he read the important line and sat up a little. "All ports of Gondor are open to this side," he murmured. That changed things. A regular maritime trade route could now be established. It would give navigation graduates a place to cut their teeth and a way to exchange knowledge with Gondor's old sea hands. Li Wei thought of names he might entrust the project to, but then stopped. The men he knew best, the original pillars of Roadside Fort, Veed, the first community representative, and Tabor, the founding principal of Roadside Fort University, had both retired. They were old and fewer hands were left to shoulder new burdens. Let them rest, he told himself. They had given all they could, simple folk who had worked quietly and faithfully, never making trouble. It's time to go see them. He filed Turgon's letter into the proper classified box, shouldered the star-shaped gem, mounted his horse, and rode for Roadside Fort. Veed greeted him in the small backyard of his home, a cane at hand and more silver in his hair than 10 years before. "Long time," Li Wei said. "A year since I retired, my lord," Veed replied, rising slowly and offering a polite bow. "Don't bother," Li Wei said, helping him settle. They sat in companionable silence for a long moment. The old man laughed softly. "Time is cruel," Veed said. "Before I know it, I can hardly stand." "You look well," Li Wei said. "Relax, enjoy it." Veed's face brightened. "That's what I'm doing now, my lord. I've never been so content." Li Wei asked, "Is there anything you want to do now that you have the time?" Veed glanced toward the great golden tree that shaded the fort and smiled. "If I had one wish, to see more of all this, to take it in slowly." "Good, enjoy it," Li Wei said, and after a while took his leave. Tabor wasn't at home. He was in the university library instead, hunched over a worn stack of books and spectacles, turning pages as if the night would never come. The sudden voice of a familiar visitor made him start, then break into a delighted smile. "My lord, what brings you here?" Tabor said, standing noisily from his stool. "Just came to see how you were," Li Wei answered. Tabor waved a hand. "I'm fine. I can't sit still, though. I need a book by my bed to sleep." He ran a finger over a leather-bound volume set apart on the table. "This is my diary, memories of odd little things. I never thought to leave anything behind, but now I like the idea of leaving a trace." "Then leave it," Li Wei said simply. "That's settled then. I have one more chapter to write," Tabor said, smiling with the small triumph of a man who has found a purpose for his long, quiet days. Li Wei lingered at the school gate for a while, thinking of the old guard, Veed and Tabor among the oldest of the territory's founders, then rode toward the military camp and the training grounds, looking for Falodon. The man liked to wander, appearing now and then at his favorite resting spots. Today, he wasn't there. "Let him find it himself," Li Wei murmured, turning his horse east. He took the star-shaped gem, now known by many as the Star of Elendil, into his saddle and rode toward Rivendell. This year, Aragorn turned 21. The young man who had once been stubborn and hard to restrain had grown, and as Li Wei rode into the dusk, he felt that some long-hidden things were finally about to be revealed. Chapter 264, Revelation of Life Experience. "What perfect timing, friend," Elrond said as he stepped out to meet Li Wei in Rivendell. "Perfect timing, how so?" Li Wei asked. Elrond handed his horse to a stable hand, then fell into step beside Li Wei. "Estelle has come of age. He's about to begin his true trials beyond these halls. I was planning to tell him his true name, his lineage, everything about his family," Elrond continued slowly. "Now that he's grown, the protections we gave him should come to an end." "It's time," Li Wei agreed. "Some things he must face on his own." Indeed, they spoke in quiet phrases that sounded like riddles to anyone eavesdropping. "Where is he now?" "Probably in the garden. I'll take you to him." Li Wei nodded. "It's been over 10 years since I last saw him. I want to see how much the young man has grown and whether he's become stronger." "It's not just his height," Elrond murmured, sighing. In the garden, the young chieftain of the Dunedain moved lightly, his eyes drifting as if searching for something. "Estelle," a clear voice answered him. Arwen appeared without a sound, and Aragorn turned, his face brightening. She was as noble and delicate as a star at twilight. He crossed the distance quickly and took her hand. Arwen laughed softly, and they sat together on a bench by the fountain, content in the simple pleasure of one another's company. "That boy has truly grown," Leeway observed from a high terrace, as Elrond rubbed his temples beside him. Elrond sighed again. A love between an elf and a man can lead to such sorrow. As a father, he did not want to see his daughter sacrifice herself to grief. "Long life is of little value if there's nothing in it worth caring for," Leeway said. "If she has someone she loves more than the endless years, is that necessarily meaningless?" "She has family. She has me and her brothers," Elrond countered. "But now she has found someone she cares for in a new way," Leeway replied. "How can you be sure? We have lived together for thousands of years. They have known one another only a short time." Elrond shook his head, unwilling to believe otherwise. After a while, the two elders felt they had intruded enough and decided to give the young people their privacy. Below, Aragorn and Arwen remained unaware of the scrutiny. They parted soon after, their meeting brief and shy, mostly silence and a single clasped hand. "Tomorrow," Elrond said at last, "tomorrow Aragorn will learn who he truly is." Leeway smiled. "I have something I would like to give him. Call on me then." "Of course," Elrond said. "I will ask you to witness it with me. Estelle will be glad as well." "You'll see tomorrow," Leeway answered, and then left. Elrond watched him go, curious but unwilling to press. Leeway, in turn, stopped at Agra's home for a light meal, then prepared food himself and hosted a small gathering. Time in Rivendell moved differently. Sometimes it felt like the years passed in an instant, and sometimes like a single moment stretched on. Before long, it was morning. Leeway and Elrond walked together into the great hall. Someone was already waiting. "Uncle Leeway," Aragorn called when he saw them, coming forward. "Long time no see," Leeway replied, then reached out to pat Aragorn's shoulder. He sighed with a mixture of pride and surprise. "You've shot up, taller than me now." Aragorn was at least a head taller than before. "In my eyes, you'll always be someone I look up to," he said humbly. "Who can say what the future holds? My journey is just beginning." "I'm ready," Aragorn added, steady and composed. He understood that his trials would take him away for a while, but he did not yet know everything that would be revealed. Elrond cleared his throat. "Leeway had something for you, but that will come after this." He looked at Aragorn. "Estelle, are you ready to know everything about yourself?" Aragorn's expression grew serious. "Everything about me?" At that moment, his mother came quietly into the hall and stood not far away. Elrond drew himself up and spoke plainly. "Your true name is Aragorn. Your father was Arathorn, the 15th chieftain of the Dunedain. You are his son and the 16th chieftain. The blood of kings runs in your veins, from both Arnor and Gondor." Chapter 265, The Delivery. The news hit Aragorn like a thunderclap, especially the second part. He could accept the title of chieftain of the Dunedain. His mother had long hinted that he was no ordinary man, and even without Elrond's words, he had suspected as much. But the rest, the reminder that Arnor, the fallen northern kingdom, lived on in the Wanderers, that the chieftain of the Dunedain was descended from Arnorian royalty, and that through intermarriage with Gondor's line, the chieftain's blood also gave a claim to Gondor, was staggering. In short, every chieftain of the Dunedain was in theory eligible to contend for Gondor's throne. For reasons of their own, though, from the loss of Gondor's last king in 2050 to the present year, 2952, no Dunedain had sought the throne for over 900 years. They had remained in the north, battling the evils there. When Elrond revealed Aragorn's lineage, the hall fell briefly silent. Aragorn bowed his head and thought. In the end, he accepted what was true. "By my name," he said, "I swear that from this day I will put my people first and fight for all free peoples." Elrond smiled. Gilraen, Aragorn's mother, nodded behind him, visibly relieved. Leeway's approving look bolstered Aragorn's confidence even more. "I am ready to depart," Aragorn said. "There are still a few things to give you before you go." Elrond produced a golden apple. This was a gift Liyue entrusted 10 years ago. It is time it was delivered to you. Aragorn's gaze fixed on it. Elrond explained, the golden apple heals and protects. It can draw life back from the brink of death. Thank you, Aragorn said, and turned to Liyue. Thank you. Don't be in a hurry, Aragorn. Elrond glanced at Liyue. Your uncle Liyue has something else to give you. You'll like it, Liyue said with a grin. I don't even know how he'll take it when he sees it. Under the curious looks of everyone present, Liyue stepped forward and produced a white elven gem that shone like a star. Its brilliance reflected in the pupils of all who looked. Aragorn was stunned. Gilrain, however, stepped forward first and drew Aragorn with her into a solemn bow toward Liyue. The Star of Arendil, she breathed. A treasured heirloom of the Dunedain and a symbol of Arnor's royal authority. Elrond told of its origin. It was lost for thousands of years. I never expected to see it again. Liyue laughed. Who would have thought the gem was secretly hoarded by a shameless fellow? I had to make some effort to procure it. You have my thanks, said Elrond. All the Dunedain will thank you. After the original Star of Eärendil was lost, Valandil, son of Isildur, had the elves craft a second gem. Though beautiful, the replacement lacked the history and true power of the first. The genuine star's light alone could put dark creatures on edge. Worn openly, it could keep orcs at bay. Now it was back, and the Dunedain felt that tremor of hope run through them. I have one request, Liyue said. Speak, Aragorn replied respectfully. When you return to your people with the star, Liyue said, seek out a Dunedain named Faladan. You met him. He accompanied me to Rivendell 10 years ago. It was he and the Wanderers who mentioned the Star of Arendil and made me notice it, Aragorn said. They may not hear this news otherwise. I will find him, Liyue promised. Aragorn agreed immediately. His mother patted his back, reminding him quietly of responsibilities he must not forget. He understood. I will remember. The Dunedain's standing rose again, though in the present moment reputation meant little. With a wave of Liyue's influence, the number of wanderers he could call to his side rivaled that of their chieftain. With Aragorn's identity revealed and the relics delivered, Elrond and Liyue left him for a time to absorb everything. They walked out to a terrace, sat across a stone table, and talked quietly. I'm curious, Elrond said. In whose hands was the gem hidden all this time? Do you really want to know? Liyue asked, amused. Elrond hesitated. I mean, if it's someone you can't speak of. No, Liyue replied. I only mean that once you know certain things, you can't go back to seeing a person the same way. Even so, I want to know, Elrond said seriously. Whatever it is, I stand on the side of justice. Very well. Liyue was blunt. The Star of Arendil was picked up and kept by Saruman. I negotiated with him a long time before he agreed to hand it over. You gave him something in return? Elrond asked. Of course, Liyue said. It was an honest exchange. I gave him things he wanted. Elrond nodded, a little blankly. It sounded as if the process had been hard-fought. The result, at least, had been good. Let us speak of something else, he said. They turned to Aragorn's training. I plan to take him through the great wilds on the eastern side of the Misty Mountains, Elrond said. There are things worth learning there. The western side, the Lone Lands and all of Eärendil, was largely Liyue's domain now. Even if he didn't say it, much in that region was under his purview. How about having him serve as an apprentice ranger for a while? Liyue suggested. The rangers of the Lone Lands are always on guard. They never relax. Elrond considered it. That could work. I'll ask him. A stint serving the rangers at Roadside Fort would be a fitting part of Aragorn's training. They agreed on it. Once the matter was settled, Liyue did not linger and left the next day. That night, Aragorn stood by the garden fountain, watching the water flow, deep in thought. Footsteps came up behind him. He turned and saw Elrond's familiar face. Aragorn felt a pang of disappointment. For a moment, he had hoped to be left alone with his thoughts, but Elrond spoke at once. I know your feelings for Arwen, he said quietly. Aragorn stiffened, then his heart sank as Elrond continued, but I will not allow this. The words fell like stone. Aragorn froze. For the first time, he felt his foster father's sternness as something unbearably hard. Yet Elrond's authority was not to be brushed aside. Then, after a long beat, he added, Unless you can become king of Gondor and Arnor, Only then will I allow the two of you to be together." Aragorn was silent. The burden of kingship was tremendous. Elrond held out his hand. "You already have the Star of Arendil. I will give you another thing." They walked to a statue bearing a stone platform. On it lay a broken blade, Arendil's sword, Narsil, the blade that had cut Sauron's finger. Together, the Star of Arendil and Narsil, these two holy relics of the High Kings of Men, symbolized the royal authority of Arnor and Gondor. Aragorn understood the weight of what had been bestowed upon him. He did not sleep much that night. Early the next morning, he bid farewell to Elrond and his mother and set off westward to serve his apprenticeship at Roadside Fort. Thanks to Dao Yu from Shushan for the 1,500 coin reward. Thanks to Bookfriend 29903111195 for 33441 for the 100 coin reward. Thanks to Lei Needen for the 100 coin reward. And thanks to everyone for your recommendation votes and monthly passes. Thank you. Chapter 266, The Evil Wizard and the Trainee Ranger. Before Aragorn left Rivendell, when Leway announced his intention to depart, Elrond called him back and relayed one more piece of news. "Around this time next year, the White Council will convene here in Rivendell. I hope you can attend." "I have a premonition that the situation in Middle-earth will change significantly," Leway replied. He agreed, his mind turning over many thoughts. The following year, 2953, would be a year of events. Elrond was right. The balance in Middle-earth was entering a new stage. If Leway had to name it, he would call it the Prosperous Transition Period, an era when the free peoples would prosper and grow, even as the forces of darkness also gained strength. There would be endless skirmishing, but no immediate all-out war. Some things were brewing, while others were being pushed forward. At nearly the same time, someone else heard the same news. At Orthanc, a gray figure approached the door and spoke a few words to the attendant. The gatekeeper bowed and announced him. A moment later, the great doors opened and Gandalf entered. "Saruman," Gandalf said in the great hall, offering the customary greeting with careful etiquette, leaving nothing to be taken amiss. "I have come to inform you that the White Council will be meeting. Could you turn around?" Saruman's back remained turned. "I mean no offense," Gandalf added, "but I find it discourteous to speak to someone with his back turned." A brief silence fell. Gandalf waited. When he had the moral high ground, he was not shy about holding it. "Humph," Saruman snorted and slowly pivoted. Half his face was in shadow, half in light. Gandalf's eyes narrowed. "Forgive my bluntness, but am I mistaken, or is there a patch on your face of a different color?" Saruman bristled as if stung. "Why do you ask such a thing, Gandalf?" "Only concern," Gandalf replied lightly. "If someone offered you such concern, would you be pleased?" Saruman shot back, his tone sharp. "Old friend, if I may advise you, do not pry into others' private affairs. Mind your own business." "Very well, I won't ask again." Gandalf smiled an innocent smile, then, seeing Saruman in no mood for further parley, bowed slightly and left. Outside the tower, he mounted and rode off, destination unknown. Meanwhile, at Roadside Fort, the Rangers' camp was in its usual bustle. A promising graduate glanced up at a tall, quiet man who had just arrived. "A Dunedain?" The apprentices turned. A young Dunedain about their age was rare. Dozens of curious eyes fell on him, and Aragorn felt the gaze as needles prickling his back. He offered a stiff smile and nodded to the ranger captain who approached. Silent and reserved, like an instructor," the captain said. "You'll be in my team from now on." The captain introduced himself. "My name is Arwen. From today, I'm your captain and the leader of the others behind you." Aragorn, keeping counsel as Elrond had advised, used an assumed name. Thorongil, he said. The Sindarin name, meaning Eagle of the Star, would travel with him for years to come. Arwen eyed him. "Don't expect special treatment because you're Dunedain. At Roadside Fort, everyone is equal." Aragorn nodded. He wasn't shy by nature, but the bright, bustling atmosphere of the camp felt foreign after Rivendell's quieter rhythms. "Introduce yourself properly. I need to register you." Arwen wanted to test the newcomer's skill. "Everyone here has survived the strictest training. Show me what you can do. Don't hold back." They took the field. Aragorn drew his sword and met Arwen's blade. The clash was quick and crisp. A crowd gathered, chanting and cheering as the duel set the tone. Two nomad instructors noticed the newcomer and exchanged a look of recognition and surprise. Then the fight began in earnest. Arwen found himself taken aback. This fledgling Dunedain moved with a steadiness and precision he hadn't expected. He had trained hard for over a decade, and yet matching this newcomer pushed him to the limit. Aragorn, for his part, felt pressure too. He wasn't having it easy. Their styles were similar enough that every exchange felt like a mirrored test of skill. A flash of steel, a low sweep, and Aragorn bent and spun with superb agility, only to meet Arwen's blade again a heartbeat later. They reached a deadlock, locked in a contest of strength and nerve. In the brief pauses, Aragorn thought he saw a certain familiar bearing in Arwen, as if a shadow of someone he had known lingered in the captain's expression. He could not name it. Just when it looked like one might gain the upper hand, Arwen relaxed and stepped back. "No more," he said, smiling despite himself. "You have real skill." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. A few younger team members whispered, teasing that the captain had been bested. Arwen flushed and recovered with a joke about friendly sparring. Aragorn raised his hand in mock surrender. "I lost," he said with a grin. "Let's call it a draw," Arwen suggested. "That will do." Arwen's respect was plain. To match a ranger captain straight away was no small feat, especially at Roadside Fort, where training was relentless and the beacon's healing aid made the fort's warriors feared and hardened. "Go get your equipment," Arwen said. "We're setting out for the wilderness hideout." Aragorn was issued a finely made set of standard gear and a bundle of supplies, including food, milk, and a small bottle of healing potion. Arwen explained each piece carefully, noting the uses and the restrictions. Aragorn had thought the milk was merely for nutrition. Arwen corrected him. "The healing potion can pull you back from the brink," Arwen explained. "It heals severe wounds in a pinch. But we don't use it lightly, only in fatal or extremely urgent situations. Every time the potions run out, Lord Liwei has to go fetch alchemical supplies from a place called the Nether. From the name you can tell it's not pleasant." Aragorn listened, then nodded. "Understood. Then let's depart." They were bound for a stronghold in the northern reaches of the Lonely Land, near the Ettenmoors. Reports had come in of ogres and orcs roaming together at night, operating with alarming boldness. "Be ready," Arwen warned. "Those are our enemies." At the name ogre, Aragorn's grip tightened on his sword. His father, Arathorn, the 15th chieftain of the Dunedain, had been killed by mountain trolls, huge armored monsters whose hide could shrug off ordinary blades and whose strikes could maim or kill in an instant. Now, facing news of ogres and orcs working in concert, Aragorn felt a familiar resolve sharpen. "Then let them come," he said. Chapter 267, Gone, Watching. Time passed. That year, an outpost north of Roadside Fort, near the Ettenmoors, was discovered and attacked. The Rangers were locked in constant skirmishes with nearby orc bands, and in one clash, ogres descended from the mountains and caught them unprepared. At the decisive moment, a probationary ranger, Commander Solongil, stepped forward. Boldly, he faced the ogre in single combat and nearly defeated it by himself. His captain put his name forward as an outstanding graduate, and the squad approved unanimously. Very few had ever received the Roadside Fort Outstanding Graduate Medal. Take Captain Arwen, who once led Aragorn. He only earned that medal after fighting Barrow-wights, saving villagers, joining countless orc hunts, and then escorting a merchant caravan all the way to Gondor, with the Lord himself adding merit to his record. The medal was valued for a reason. Plain and inconspicuous on the outside, it was pure gold within. Subtle, well-concealed, but priceless. In 2952, there was little beyond small, forgettable events, until Liwei found the Star of Elendil, lost for 1,000 years. Through his efforts, the emblem of Arnor's kingship saw the light once more. For safety, and the fragments of Narsil were entrusted to Rivendell, left in the care of the elves. After visiting Rivendell, Liwei settled quietly within his own lands. People often saw him moving among workshops and smithies, talking with retired artisans and masters of their crafts, learning and exchanging ideas. Life went on at an easy pace. At the start of 2953 came heavier news. The notorious King Fengur of Rohan, long tormented by illness, finally died at home. Marshals, nobles, and common folk alike implored his only legitimate heir, Sengel, to return and take the crown. Reluctant, Sengel nevertheless came home with his family and was crowned the 16th king of Rohan. He was left to clear the ruins his rotten father had left behind. Gondor, too, felt the passing of a generation. Ecthelion, Ecthelion, a weak voice called from the prime minister's chamber. Ecthelion ran to his father's bedside and took Turgon's hand. Turgon turned his head and looked at his son, so full of life, and memories coursed through him. How time flies. Ecthelion blinked hard, fighting to keep composed. Turgon smiled faintly. Lift your head, child. Let me see your face. You and Denethor, you both must live on and see Gondor prosper, Turgon said. I swear it, father. Ecthelion could not hold back his tears. Where is Denethor? Turgon asked, opening his eyes with difficulty. He just returned, father. He fought and came back victorious. Good. Call him in a while. I would like to see him. Ecthelion stepped out with another young man. The mention of Denethor made Ecthelion think of the golden apple in his possession. Father, Denethor has the golden apple, perhaps. Turgon shook his head. It's of no use, Ecthelion. You must understand. I am not ill in the way you mean. This is simply my time. Silence filled the room. Turgon cleared his throat. One last thing. He looked at Li Wei when the messenger brought him to the prime minister's chamber. Li Wei had come through the Hellgate to the Gondor outpost and now stood beside the bed. The light from the western windows painted the room in crimson, but left Turgon's face pale. Good afternoon, Li Wei said softly. Turgon gestured toward the door. You two, go out for a moment. There are things I want to say. Reluctantly, Ecthelion and the other young man left. Turgon looked at the closed door and then at Li Wei. Denethor fought bravely. He personally slew a dozen orcs. He's a fine warrior, Li Wei replied. He will be glad to hear it. Turgon exhaled slowly. A new age is coming. We old men must make way. You are different, Li Wei said. For more than a decade you have remained the same, Turgon replied. He chuckled, remembering old disputes. There was a time I thought to force you into submission. My judgment back then was no clearer than it is now. It was Ecthelion who stopped you, Li Wei said. He is a good son, Turgon agreed. I believe Gondor will prosper under him, and under Denethor too. For 1,000 years my family has protected Gondor without ever coveting the throne. The seat sits beside us, but our eyes have always been on the people below. I do not know what the future will bring, nor the end of this world, he said more quietly. Only that nothing lasts forever. Life, prosperity, all have an end. Then, softer still, I want to ask your forgiveness. Li Wei shook his head. That was long ago. I didn't hold it against you then, and I don't now. No, not that. I mean this. Rulers will make mistakes in the years ahead. I ask your tolerance for them in advance. Tolerance, Li Wei repeated, and then nodded. I promise. Turgon smiled as if a burden had been eased. He rested a while, and then, with all the peace he could muster, he said, My time has come. Then, good night, my friend. Good night, Li Wei replied. Turgon closed his eyes. In the Third Age, year 2953, Turgon, the 24th ruling prime minister of Gondor, passed away at the age of 98. During his tenure, Gondor had known peace. Spring returned to Roadside Fort. Tall malorn trees stirred in the breeze, golden blooms threading through their branches. Beside one of those trees, a small mound of earth had been freshly piled. Little Pink lay curled beside it, basking in the sun, lethargic. Few knew what lay beneath that mound. Only the cook, who had always tended Little Pink's meals, had planted a single yellow dandelion there, letting it sway. Each day the cook did his duty, greeting Little Pink and bringing the dragon its favorite dishes. More often than not, Little Pink merely flicked its tail, sniffed the food, and lay back down. The playful creature that once roamed the grounds had become withdrawn, preferring to coil and sleep. A gentle hand stroked the dragon's iron-hard scales. Little Pink opened one eye, leaned into the touch, and at last found the appetite to lick at the offered food. Dragon and human sat together on the grass, watching the land they protected, silent sentinels of a world that moved on, carrying the living forward and burying the past beneath a single yellow flower. Not long after Gandalf had left Orthanc, he came to Lothlorien. A gentle golden light wrapped the forest, bathing the air in warmth. Gandalf. Lord Celeborn and Lady Galadriel stepped from the great hall to meet him. Greetings to both of you, Gandalf said, bowing slightly. Galadriel's voice was soft. What news do you bring? of the White Council. Gandalf announced the meeting. Then he hesitated and added, "By the way, lady, have you heard anything of Saruman's recent doings?" Celeborn and Galadriel exchanged a look, each seeing uncertainty in the other's face. "We have heard nothing new," Celeborn answered. "I feared I was presumptuous," Gandalf said after a moment. "Forgive me. I only ask because I came from Orthanc and saw that his right cheek was a little swollen. I was worried." They talked quietly for a time. Months later, the same scene repeated in Lindon. "I don't know," Círdan said when Gandalf inquired. After a year of asking, Gandalf finally rode to Roadside Fort. He found Li Wei there, working at the enchanting table, tempering the fort's weapons. "Yes, I hit him," Li Wei said without looking up. "He deserved it." Gandalf leaned on the table. "What happened?" Li Wei moved a blade under the light and explained, calm and precise. "Saruman found the Star of Elendil and kept it in Orthanc for himself. I had intended to trade for it quietly, but he grew too greedy. He went back on his word, so I had to resort to other means." "The other means?" Gandalf prompted. Li Wei's expression did not change. "There were others who did not keep their promises. I gave them no choice." He tapped the polished steel. "Those who were not reasonable turned to ash. Yes, the star was recovered. As for the other item lost with it." He looked at Gandalf, and the old wizard understood without words. "It is not with Saruman," Li Wei concluded. Gandalf breathed out, partly relief and partly resignation. "Elrond has called the council," he said. "What will you do?" "Elrond told me," Li Wei replied, setting a newly enchanted sword in its rack. "I will go." "Then let us travel together." Gandalf nodded. They left at once. Middle-earth had been comparatively peaceful that year. Rohan and Gondor had welcomed new rulers, the 25th ruling Prime Minister Ecthelion and the 16th King of Rohan, Sengel, leaders who promised a new age. Perhaps sensing the turn of an era, the wise called another meeting of the White Council at Rivendell. In the spring of 2953, the council gathered again. Saruman still presided. The main participants were Gandalf, Galadriel, Elrond, Círdan, and Li Wei. Others were nominal members, lords who listened more than they spoke. The White Council remained an irregular, loosely bound assembly with no binding authority, but this time there was an element that might change that. One new member, whose influence could truly call many to arms. His rallying power rivaled the High King's. When the members came together in Rivendell, every pair of eyes drifted to Saruman's right cheek. The bruise had long since healed, but the glance was not lost on him. He took offense. He looked at Li Wei, who returned the look with none of Saruman's heat. Li Wei, instead, tilted his head and watched the distant sky as if it were the most interesting thing in the world. Gandalf, too, stared off at the clouds, appearing distracted. Elrond noticed this awkwardness and shifted his gaze. Only Galadriel and Círdan kept their faces composed and unreadable. Saruman scowled, his beard trembling with barely contained anger, but no one would openly accuse him. After all, secretly keeping the Star of Elendil was a suspect act, and speaking it aloud would only draw attention to his wrongdoing. He had to be patient. With the members present, the meeting began. The discussion turned at once to the whereabouts of the One Ring. Opinions split and debate followed. "I saw a ring on a ring wraith," Gandalf said first. "It was one of the 9. That ring wraith, wearing the ring, tried to attack the shipyard at the river bend but was driven off." "The locations of the other rings are of no consequence," Saruman interrupted. "To control them all, the great enemy must possess the One Ring. The Nazgul are different. Long since corrupted, the enemy can bend them without the One Ring. Besides, that ring was lost ages ago, washed into the sea by the Anduin. No one can find it. There is no cause for alarm." "You base your claim on an investigation?" Li Wei asked coldly. "I'm afraid that may not be reliable." Saruman straightened as if stung. "You accused me of taking the Star of Elendil from Isildur's remains and hiding it. You never spoke of this before." At that, every pair of eyes shifted to Saruman. His composure faltered. "It isn't with me now," he said. "It's in the hands of bandits." "You mean you weren't paid?" Li Wei stepped away from the pillar and faced him fully, looking straight at the healed cheek. "You went back on your word at the last moment, so I had to take other measures." "You went back on your word?" Saruman barked. "I only wish to discuss matters longer." "You lack patience." Li Wei cut him off, voice flat. You filled your head with schemes and muscle. You only know fighting. Shut your, Saruman began. Enough. Elrond rose and spoke, his tone calm and decisive. Leeway has returned the Star of Elendil to the Dunedain. Let this matter be closed for now. That single sentence silenced Saruman. He saw further argument would only make him look worse and fell quiet. Gandalf smiled inwardly. Saruman met his glance and forced his face into neutrality. There has indeed been no news of the One Ring for a long while, Gandalf said. I have searched the Anduin Valley many times over the years and found nothing. Perhaps it really is no longer upon the continent. Yet we must remain vigilant. Even if the ring has sunk into the sea, there are many ways it could return. Not only men and other thinking creatures can be tempted, fish or sea creatures might carry it back. A fisherman or a wanderer could one day haul it up, and then tragedy could follow. The great enemy's power continues to grow, Galadriel added. He yields not, and we must not be complacent. Saruman nodded, having regained his composure. The council's tone and direction had been set. They would assume the ring was gone, but would not let down their guard. Círdan had said little throughout. Though he was one of the principal members and the old keeper of Lindon, he seemed content to witness events rather than shape them. When the meeting ended, Saruman rose to leave and breathed a quiet sigh of relief. As he descended the steps, an odd tremor ran through him. He stopped, turned, and saw Lyway likewise turn and give him a deliberate, meaningful smile. The look held more than words. Saruman felt for a moment the balance of power shift, and he understood that whatever had been settled in the hall, the matter between them had not died with the bruise on his cheek. Chapter 269, Undercurrents. In 2954, Mount Doom, long dormant, erupted again. Rivers of lava ran down its flanks, and a great cloud of ash rose over Mordor. From that time on, Mount Doom erupted frequently. From high ground to the east, the horizon often burned with a crimson glow and choked with black smoke. That same year, the last refugees from Ithilien were moved into Gondor's interior. After their departure, only Gondor's and Mordor's forces remained on the land, truly turning it into a disputed territory. It was during that evacuation that Leeway returned to Gondor. Part of him had been alarmed by Mount Doom's activity and came to investigate. Part of him came to check on his base and to cover the refugees' retreat. With nothing else demanding his attention, Leeway set about helping Gondor repair the ruined city walls of Osgiliath and the great stone bridge spanning the river. His work was so fast that by the time word reached White City, he had already rebuilt almost half the walls. Ecthelion, grateful, rode out personally from the White City to thank him and dispatched his son Denethor, then commander of the city, to assist Leeway. The tall young commander proved utterly compliant with Leeway's orders, carrying them out without hesitation. With Gondor's full cooperation, the repairs were quickly completed. The walls looked as good as new, the arch bridge was restored, armies marched across it, and merchant vessels and training ships from roadside fort passed beneath its arches. When the work was done, Leeway left without mentioning any payment. Gondor, it seemed, had become almost like home to him. Leeway returned to roadside fort just in time for the graduation of the intern rangers from 2 years before. At the ceremony, he personally pinned medals on the most outstanding rangers. There was no fixed quota. Anyone who truly distinguished themselves and won the respect of their peers could be recommended. The standard was high. Earning the medal early required extraordinary deeds. Aragorn's achievements more than met that standard. He had bested an ogre single-handedly, infiltrated an enemy camp alone to bring back critical intelligence, and planned and executed a daring raid that wiped out a medium-sized orc encampment of at least 200 with only a few dozen men. Even one of those feats would have sufficed. Aragorn had done all three. The other 4 recipients were also deserving. Each had notable strengths, agility, or accumulated merits in battle. "Well done," Leeway said as he pinned the medal on Aragorn. "What are your plans? Do you want to stay? With your ability, you could command a full 200-man assault company, and in a few years maybe even rise to be a commander." Aragorn hesitated only for a moment. A commander there would be answerable to almost no one but Leeway. The leadership posts were carefully chosen and left their holders broad autonomy. "This is a good place. Aragorn admitted, "but there are other places that need my help." "Good," Liyue said. "Go and come back whenever you like." He clapped him on the shoulder and turned him to face his comrades. Arwen, who also wore an outstanding medal and had been Aragorn's team leader, came forward. "I know you don't belong here," she said quietly, "but this will always be your home." They embraced. That night, the whole squad saw Aragorn off. He looked at his friends with real feeling. "I will never forget what I learned here, or my time with you," he promised. He raised an eyebrow at Arwen. She raised one back. "Is that all you learned?" she teased. Isengard. A year after the White Council had met, the tower and its approaches looked different. More guards, and the south entrance set with stronger walls and a heavier iron gate. The master here seemed to be preparing for something. "Orcs," Saruman muttered in contempt. "Filthy, ignorant, without honor, like crawling vermin." At the edge of a forest, on a small rise, a conspicuous white-cloaked figure looked down on a kneeling band of orcs. "You want to serve me?" he asked. The orc chieftain prostrated himself, voice trembling. "We swear it. We swear to serve you. Your will be our goal. Whatever you command, we will do, if only you will protect us." He spoke with bitterness. The Wildlanders had promised these outcasts that the White Wizard would take them in. Liars, he thought. Saruman's eyes narrowed. "Can you do anything?" he asked, and his tone shifted. "Even if it means defying the Dark Lord's commands?" The chieftain stiffened. Nominally, Sauron held sway over all orcs and wargs, but the reach of Mordor's power here was weaker. In the Misty Mountains, orcs could raise their own chiefs, and if strong enough, a chieftain could bargain with Sauron to some degree. Their allegiance was not fixed. "We will," the chieftain said finally. Sauron was distant. Saruman stood before them now. Perhaps you are not entirely useless." Saruman gave the order. "Go, live in the dark places, carry out all my commands, and you must not touch anything I forbid. Do you understand?" "We understand, master." The orcs left. Saruman watched them go, a small, cold smile on his face. Between him and the Blacklanders and the orcs near Mordor, he was building a private force. The Blacklanders obeyed him because he tolerated their forays into Rohan and even allowed them passage through Isengard. In effect, he enabled their raids under the guise of reclaiming their land. The orcs, sheltered and used by him, acted in secret. Neither the Blacklanders nor the orcs would yet dare to stretch their malice as far as the Lonely Lands or the western reaches beyond the Misty Mountains. For now, they would step into Rohan, citing revenge and homecoming. Border disputes were being set in motion. Chapter 270, Spies. The Shire. Inside Orthanc, Saruman whispered the name, brows knitting. Why would Gandalf be interested in that place? His informants had reported that Gandalf had been visiting the area in recent years, almost every year. A trip to Roadside Fort would be nothing unusual. The fort and the Shire were allies, and an occasional visit would not raise alarm. But the Hobbit's homeland, aside from its pipeweed and particular foods, what drew Gandalf there? Saruman waved a hand and summoned a servant. "Tell our agents in the area to shadow Gandalf and report every scrap of information to me. And Roadside Fort, put infiltrators into the town. I want intelligence from there." The servant left, and Saruman's agents and spies in the forest began to move. "I will watch you all, always." A few months later, on the southern edge of Bree, in a small village, a handful of grim-faced men gathered and spoke in low voices. "I've scouted Roadside Fort," one said. "Their entry restrictions are practically non-existent. You can just walk in." "Really?" "Absolutely. Our man saw it himself." "Good. Then we move. If we succeed, Lord Saruman will reward us." They set off for the Lonely Land, a place named lonely but far from desolate, and reached Roadside Fort. The report had been accurate. The gate guards barely checked anyone. As they walked through, the guards on the wall glanced at them. It was enough to make the spies' hearts drop. Still, by training and habit, they kept their composure and walked through. Perhaps the guards had truly only glanced. Perhaps the spies were composed. In any case, they entered the town. "How unprofessional," one muttered. Even the old gatekeepers in Bree would at least ask a few formal questions. "Shh! Don't talk so loud. If someone overhears us, we're finished." They found a newly built area under construction where few people lived and nights were usually quiet. A few days later, they compared notes. "Those iron golems never come this way, and there aren't many guards. The town's lax. That'll make things easier. I've learned who manages this district. A community representative. He goes past here every day with papers and a ledger. We need to get those. Once we have them, we disappear and report back. Same as always. Finish the job and run. They waited, tense and alert. An old man with a notebook tucked under his arm strolled by, oblivious. Go. They moved at once. In a blink, the spies fell, one after another. The leader managed a moment of resistance but was pinned down by the community representative. Don't move, the man said quietly. I'm saving you. A voice hissed into the leader's ear. You'll live if you fall into my hands. If you'd moved another inch, you wouldn't have met my fist, but... Clang. A 3-meter-tall shadow loomed behind them, hands raised. Cold sweat broke out on their backs. An iron golem. When had one come so close? The skirmish would never have been serious, but something had smelled killing intent, and the golem had followed it. You fools, still trying to fight me? The representative said. Before I was a community representative, I was a ranger for 5 years. Your crude brawling wouldn't embarrass an orc. The commotion drew several curious townsfolk. They took charge of the captives and escorted them to the proper authorities. Spies, one of the townspeople muttered. I haven't seen your sort in a long time. Last I remember, it was in a tavern in Bree. I heard you were hiding in the woods. Why have you started showing up again? The spies were silent. If you won't speak, I'll just assume you've forgotten where you are, the community representative continued. Someone will remind you shortly. He laughed at their defiance. Then his tone grew serious. You think you were lucky that the guards let you through? No. You've never seen an OK army of tens of thousands, nor beasts that shake the earth when they walk, nor the terror of the ringwraiths. Those are things most of us here have lived through. We're not flowers that wilt at a cool breeze, nor tender shoots that hide behind a lord's protection, he said. Anyone who dares invade roadside fort will be found. Follow the vine and you find the melon, and then you will pay. They arrived at the barracks. Works here, someone said. The townsfolk shoved the captives through the gate. Help them remember why they came. All right, clang. The gate shut. The first band of spies sent to roadside fort vanished without a trace. The town's motto among the people was blunt. This world is cruel. Either be strong or die. The captured men muttered back, bitterly. No one said it would be hard even to die here. Stop, I'll talk, someone pleaded. Not long after, a document turned up, folded into the daily reports. It was handed to Li Wei. A ranger grinned and said, he's probably asking for another beating. Any other messages? Li Wei asked. Yes. The ranger's face grew more sober. There are some strangers in the southern Shire who don't look like locals. Their eyes dart about. Sometimes they watch merchants as they pass. Sometimes they crouch in corners to eavesdrop. When our people walked past, a few of the bolder ones actually followed us. Usually, we followed them back. Li Wei pressed. Did they do anything else? They bought a lot of pipeweed and food. Li Wei raised an eyebrow. What kind of pipeweed? Long Valley leaf, from Long Valley. They bought a lot of it, along with Green Hills cheese and White Ridge sausages. The ranger produced a long list and handed it over. Everything these suspicious men bought is on this ledger. Li Wei scanned the list. All pipeweed and food. Are they on holiday or buying in bulk for a festival? What do you think? The ranger asked. He hesitated, then said, Years ago, we saw similar men buying Long Valley leaf in large quantities, but we assumed it was normal trade and didn't investigate. Now it seems likely they're the same group. As to whether they're spies or commercial scouts gathering market intelligence about the Shire, it's hard to say. So far, all they've done is buy local specialties and ship them east in batches. Chapter 270, Strong Persuasion. Far away in Isengard, Saruman still had no idea that the things he was curious about and coveted had already been catalogued and reported. Every one of his spies, almost all their actions, was being monitored in return. Sometimes what's terrifying isn't ignorance, but the knowledge that everything you know is what someone else wants you to know. Trying to extend influence into Eriador had been foolish from the start. Why has so much time passed with no news? Saruman muttered, restless in Orthanc. These freeloaders had better not be slacking off. Complaints aside, life went on. That night, After a day of research, Saruman laid aside his papers and meant to rest. The main gate of Orthanc was hammered at. He ignored it. Thump, thump, thump. Saruman covered his ears. Thump, 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 thump. Bang! The sound jolted him. He gripped his staff and hurried down the stairs. When he reached the hall, he nearly lost his composure. "Where's my gate?" he demanded. "In my hand," came the calm reply. The figure Saruman least wanted to see stood in the doorway, the stolen gate propped casually at his side. "You'd better put it back," Saruman snapped. "What if I don't?" the man returned coolly. They regarded each other for a long moment. Perhaps out of pride, or some remaining restraint, Saruman softened just slightly. "You had better not touch my gate again." "It's just a gate. I can replace it with a better one any time," the other said. "I didn't come here to argue about doors." A cold draft blew in through the opening, carrying a sense of foreboding. "Then what do you want?" "You'll have to ask your spies," the man said. "I never forget a wrong." "So that's why you're smashing my gate at night?" "I don't know what grudge you think we have." "You've been attacking me unilaterally for some time. I haven't even pursued you, and now you'll pin some made-up grievance on me?" Saruman's voice rose. "Enough. I will show you the true majesty of an Istari. Keep your arrogance." The man, Leeway, stepped forward. "Your spies have confessed everything." "I've been hearing spies from you all evening," Saruman snapped. "I know nothing of this." "It doesn't matter if you deny it. I have confirmed it was you." Leeway met Saruman's glare. "Understand this. I don't need your admission. Even if I say I'm simply here to cause trouble, what can you do?" "You are far too arrogant." Saruman plunged his staff into the stone, fury flashing across his face. "You." He broke off as Leeway continued, deadly calm. "I'm warning you. Admit your wrongdoing and promise it won't happen again, and I can forgive you. Consider tonight a visit. I'll even fix your gate, and we can talk. But refuse to own up or secretly continue your schemes, and I will be merciless." Saruman, proud and self-important, could not bow to a few words. "My past restraint has made you bold," he said tightly. "Today I will teach you manners." "Is that so?" Leeway drew his sword, Nemesis, which flashed as if it were alive. Saruman's robe billowed without wind, regal and terrible, and Leeway's attention sharpened. He leveled the sword at Saruman. "How many times have we fought?" "Too many to count. Since we first met," Saruman growled. "Then settle it." Leeway advanced. Saruman snorted and raised his staff. "Prepare to learn." He shouted, "Remember, this is my Orthanc." A roar of power burst from him. The lights went out. Hangings and ornaments were torn up and blasted against walls and floor, shattering. The hall filled with the pressure of Saruman's wrath. This was his home ground. As long as he stood in Orthanc, few could harm him. A rune shield flared about Leeway, helping him absorb the force. He bit a golden apple, and a faint golden aura shimmered around him, an action that made Saruman bristle in disgust at the casual display of such resource. A pearl arced through the air toward Saruman. He dodged instinctively. With a flicker of purple particles, Leeway blinked to his side and struck. Saruman raised his staff, using it as a blunt parry. The clash rang, metal on magic, and for the first time the two were evenly matched. Sparks flew. They traded blows in close quarters, but Saruman was a wizard, not a swordsman. Leeway pressed him hard. Saruman rolled aside to avoid a flash of sword energy that nicked his sleeve. He backed up, establishing a 10-meter distance, and bellowed, "Retreat!" The thunderous command drained much of the rune shield's power, but the shout's magical authority was blocked beyond Leeway's defenses and had no lasting effect. Horror flickered across Saruman's face. He lunged with a dagger to fend off a sword strike at his throat when a sudden heat wave rose, flames swirling. With a crack, Leeway's last protective ward fractured. He stumbled back, barely maintaining his footing. Saruman pounced. "Rise for me," he cried, and a force tried to lift Leeway off his feet. A small, efficient voice replied, "Emergency shield activated." Leeway's wards did what they were made to do. "That accursed shield, how is it still up?" Saruman snarled. He conjured a fireball the size of a man and hurled it. The flames crashed into Leeway, igniting everything around him. The rune shield shattered. For the first time in a long while, Leeway felt real harm. He staggered out of the blaze, his tunic charred and orange-red embers licking at his skin. He downed a fire resistance potion and the flames instantly died away. "Oh, you think that's enough?" Saruman said. He was proud of his power. Wizards were not ordinary mortals. White magic was formidable. In legend, Gandalf's struggle with a Balrog had been a mutual doom, and Saruman considered his own authority and power greater still. A small, deep-red creature fluttered above Leeway, wings ablur. "A bat?" Saruman sneered. "Nine hell's flame bat," Leeway corrected. Saruman flicked his staff and smote the creature. It exploded, negligible in effect. Saruman sneered, certain of his advantage, until a rustling rose at his ear, and in a breath, dozens more bats poured out. Leeway had cut staves and summoned hundreds of the tiny fiends. Against humanoids, they were savage. "You scoundrel!" Saruman cried and pointed his staff. "Get out of my sight!" With one shout, hundreds of flame bats detonated, wiped clean by his command. But the blast revealed that Leeway had already tossed an ender pearl. He could not remain where he was. When the bats exploded, a shadow slipped behind Saruman, and a cold hand settled on his shoulder. It clamped like iron. "Caught," a voice hissed. "You're going to pay today, Saruman." "Wait. Leeway, we can talk." Saruman spun, trying to surprise him, and a pulse of psychic force rolled out, nearly lifting Leeway. The rune shield took a momentary recharge and held, giving Leeway time to vault forward with a dashing sword strike. He poured everything into that assault. The tower shook with flames, thunder, sparks, and the sound of splintering stone. A wizard in his own domain was a terrible thing, but Leeway had the power to alter the battlefield. Over time, he turned Orthanc into no man's land. At last, a crushing blow sent the white-robed figure sprawling to the floor. When the smoke cleared from the great doors to the stairwell, the hall was unrecognizable. Charred scorches, thunder-cleaved beams, makeshift blocks and barricades, the rubble of decorative finery. By night's end, Saruman lay beaten and humiliated. In the year 2954, Saruman would give his word. He would no longer send spies to Roadside Fort or the Free Cities, nor would he threaten the Free Cities as a whole. In the years that followed, even the men of the Black Land grew cautious. They no longer dared harass the Rohan border through Isengard. Chapter 272, Encounter. Old friends withered away one after another, like leaves in the wind. In the year 2955, the village elder Veed finally could not hold on any longer. He was 80, a long life for an ordinary man. In his last moments, Leeway stayed at his bedside, speaking quietly with him. They recounted past events, the refugees' journey from the Anduin to Roadside Fort, life beyond the walls, their astonishment when they first arrived. Both were calm, as they always had been. "The years I've seen and lived through these past few have given me more wonder and meaning than decades before," Veed sighed. "My lord, my only regret is that my mind isn't as clear as it once was, and my body fails me. I can't help you as I used to." As if sensing the end was near, Veed murmured, "A few days ago, I went to the school and learned a farewell phrase from an elf. Listen and tell me if my pronunciation is good. Nai tiruvantel arvaruvantel ivalartiel yana nuvilia. They say it when they bid someone farewell. My beloved lord, I truly hope we will meet again, but for now I can only say goodbye. May all the world's luck go with you." Veed's eyes closed slowly. "It was a pleasure to have met you, Veed." "Goodbye," Leeway whispered. The living took their leave, and the departed smiled. A new grave appeared at Roadside Fort. Leeway planted a flower at its headstone, looked up at the clear blue sky, and wondered how long such days would last. In 2956, after Veed, Tabor, the first headmaster of Roadside Fort School, also passed away. Leeway sat silently before the two graves, turning Tabor's notebook page by page. As the old man had written, it was mostly records of the school's daily trifles and many little conversations with Leeway. Afternoons grading homework in the library, debates over lesson plans, festival gatherings, and the banquet marking the completion of the Sky Road. The Lord, the Wanderers, and the Elves gazed at the starry sky from the unlit city walls, with brilliant lights and celebrating crowds behind them, Tabor had written. He had been watching everything all along. When Leeway reached the notebook's last entry, he was startled. "With this, I review my insignificant life and commemorate the encounter with our beloved Lord." The book snapped shut. Leeway lay back on the grass before the grave, closed his eyes, and let out a soft breath. That same year, far to the east in the wilds of Rovanian near the Brown Lands, a lithe figure darted through tall grass, chasing a handful of orcs. "Stinking wanderer!" one of the orcs cursed. If you've got the guts, keep chasing. Our main camp's ahead. You're as good as dead. The pursuer made no reply, moving through thickets with only the rustle of bushes to betray him. The orcs glanced back nervously. What unnerved them most wasn't the sound, but that they couldn't see him, couldn't tell whether he was behind them. A sudden roar split the air. Wargs, one spat. The orcs skidded to a halt as a pack of snarling wargs burst from the underbrush, eyes fixed on the rear. The wolves' low growls seemed to ask, "What's the situation?" The orcs told them, "A stinking wanderer. He's already killed 8 of our companions." The wargs sneered in disdain. To be bested by a single wanderer was shameful. Any respectable predator could take down more than that. The orcs bristled at the look. "You don't understand him." A warg's roar cut them off. One lunged toward the shrubs, and the rest followed. The orcs leapt forward, with scimitars flashing. Out of the brush, the wanderer was forced into the open, cut off between teeth and blades. He fought on all sides, warding off the wolves with his sword, evading the orcs' slashes. Sweat slicked his face. The struggle was ferocious. As another warg leapt at his back, an arrow arced and struck the wolf dead. The wanderer spun and drove his blade into the pouncing beast. "He's got allies!" the orcs cried, and the wargs launched toward the arrow's origin. One was felled by another arrow. The helper hidden in the trees could no longer remain concealed. An elf leapt out. He abandoned his bow and drew twin, flashing daggers, springing into the fray. Quick, precise, and inexorable, the two of them cut through the pack. Where a dozen wargs and several orcs had threatened, now a dozen lay dead. As the wanderer moved to pursue, the elf was faster. A dagger drove through an orc's skull, ending the fight. The elf grinned. "Seems your hiding skills need work, wanderer of roadside fort. Should I call you Little Sprout?" The wanderer laughed and held up a medal. "Look closely, the excellent wanderer medal. Uncle Leeway pinned it on me himself." "Oh," the elf withdrew his blade from the fallen orc's head. "Then perhaps my showing up was redundant. You called him Uncle Leeway?" "Yes," the wanderer hesitated, then added, "Thorongil, I once studied at Roadside Fort. My elder is well acquainted with Uncle Leeway." The elf nodded, returning the courtesy with a name of his own, Legolas of the Woodland Realm. They did not exchange true ancestries or long histories. They kept to quick truths. "Regardless, you saved me. Thank you, Aragorn," Thorongil said, bowing slightly. "I'm grateful you were here. Do you have any orders? Maybe I can help." Aragorn asked. "No orders. I was out for a walk." Legolas tilted his head. "What about you?" "Same, wandering about and cutting down a few orcs on the way." And a quiet fell between them. Then Aragorn said, "I plan to go to Rohan and see it for myself. Their new king is said to be wise." "Rohan," Legolas murmured, "land of horse lords. I've heard one thing about that place." "What?" Legolas's eyes darkened, almost amused. "The previous king was soundly beaten by Lee Wei." Aragorn fell silent. He had not heard that before. He did know that anyone who'd been bested by Lee Wei had to have earned it. "Don't worry. The current king gets along well with Lee Wei. You can travel there safely." "I'd hoped to go no farther than Grand Road Town before the year's end. It's lively there," Legolas added. "Do elves get lonely?" Aragorn asked. "Perhaps," Legolas shrugged. They parted with a casual farewell, their first meeting brief but warm. 2 months later, Aragorn crossed the Anduin, passed the North Downs, and in Eastfold stumbled into a skirmish. Rohan cavalry engaged a small orc band. He joined the fight and helped annihilate the orcs. The riders surrounded him afterward, questioning him until he showed the excellent Wanderer medal. Their caution eased. They pointed him toward Edoras. Thanks to Sengil's tireless work over recent years, the capital was no longer a ruin. It was reviving, prosperity threading back into streets. In the Great Hall, Sengil received Aragorn. Another guest was there as well, an old man with a gray cloak who fixed Aragorn with a long, assessing stare. "I am Gandalf, Gandalf the Grey," the old man said. He peered Aragorn over as if weighing him against some invisible yardstick, then nodded. "Good, you carry the bearing of your ancestors." Gandalf clapped Aragorn on the shoulder, led him to the hall's front, and introduced him to Sengil. "Perhaps this young man can be of use to you." So the gears of fate began to turn. Oh! A year later at Roadside Fort, a roaring crowd ringed the makeshift arena in the barracks, watching the fighters on the stage. At the highest vantage point, Leeway sat and watched the fierce duel below. The first Roadside Fort Legion individual ability competition was underway. Go, go! Clang! Two swords met, and two comrades who would have gladly shielded one another in past battles now only had one aim: to win. Step down, Arwen. The title of Legion Champion is mine. You're the one who should step down, ARG. Last year I single-handedly took down a ghoul. As if nobody else has done that, the two veteran rangers ground their teeth and pushed harder. They've really grown, Followed on murmured beside Li Wei, a note of awe in his voice. A dozen years ago, those two nearly died fighting a ghoul, Li Wei replied. If that distress beacon hadn't gone off in time, and if I hadn't been nearby, Followed on shook his head. He wouldn't dwell. Otherwise, he'd have to admit none of them would have beaten that ghoul without help. Now, those boys had become captains of ranger companies, capable of handling ghouls alone. Both had fought through the tournament, each dispatching over a dozen top rangers and countless regular assault team members, all for the title of Legion Champion. Swordlight flashed. They traded blow after blow. Neither could gain a clear advantage. Usually inseparable, today they felt like enemies. Their fight had been long and merciless, scratches on the ground and bloodied hands a testament to how much they'd given. Neither would fall until they had bled every reserve dry. As the sun moved, the stage grew quieter. Both fighters had exhausted nearly every technique. Ergi, eyes bloodshot, drew a deep breath. One last move, to decide the winner. What do you say? Haha, all right. Arwen's voice was hoarse. Ready, 3. They both launched at the same time, launching the sneak attack they'd planned. You were going to ambush me. Likewise. Sneak attacks were strategy. They hit and tumbled, elbows, chokes, and grapples, a messy, intimate duel. Over 12 years as Rangers had sharpened them into dangerous opponents, even older veterans had to be careful training with them. Either man would have earned the title. Gurgle, under Aergi's counter, Arwen foamed at the mouth and went limp. Haha, I win. Aergi shouted, releasing his hold. Thump! Arwen suddenly landed an elbow, knocking the air from Aergi's lungs. He lay flat, too exhausted to rise. That's what you get for not finishing me off. Arwen rose with a crooked smile as the crowd erupted. Li Wei walked onto the stage and placed a laurel wreath on Arwen's head. Congratulations, he said. You and your companion are both excellent. I gave you extra points back then. Li Wei's tone was casual. You remember us? Arwen asked. Of course, it hasn't been that long. Li Wei hesitated for a moment. Over a decade had passed. The man before him was no longer a boy, stubbled, rough-skinned, hair grown long, broad-shouldered. Only his clear eyes betrayed the earlier youth. Arwen took Li Wei's words as humility. Rest up. I'll be waiting, Li Wei added. What? Arwen didn't understand. I'll be waiting for you to challenge me. The single sentence sent a surge through Arwen. Pride, a need to prove himself, but his body was too exhausted, and reverence for the legend before him tempered that urge. When Arwen returned to the arena, the sun had shifted. The crowd hadn't thinned. Li Wei stood on stage like a statue, casually drawing a plain steel sword from the rack. A fierce fighting spirit ignited in Arwen. Fight! He cried. Whoosh! Arwen charged and struck with everything he had. Clang! Li Wei parried, and for a moment found an opening. He adjusted instantly. The two traded blows as equals. When Arwen pressed with a swift, powerful cut, Li Wei parried and disarmed him. The crowd gasped as Arwen's sword flew free, but he reacted instantly, drawing a dagger to defend. Watch out, Li Wei warned. Then, with a single, brutal upward strike, the uppercut, he sent Arwen sailing into the air. Li Wei drew his bow and aimed as Arwen fell. You've lost, boy. No. Arwen stood shakily and challenged, smiling defiantly. I haven't lost. Lord, try again. Li Wei grinned, and trusting the man's skill, loosed an arrow. A crisp sound rang out midair. Arwen had thrown his dagger and struck the arrow, sending it off course. Li Wei shot again as Arwen came down, but Arwen's timing was uncanny. He drew his own bow mid-landing and shot, intercepting Li Wei's second arrow as well. The crowd went wild. Li Wei laughed. The precision was comparable to a bard's. This was no ordinary fighter. He tossed Arwen's sword back. Arwen caught it, and the duel resumed. This time, Li Wei's assault was relentless. He abandoned fancy disarms and uppercuts and attacked like a man who never held back, every strike at full power. The pressure crushed Arwen's space. He looked for openings that never quite arrived. Then, a heavy blow struck the floor, and Arwen's sword cracked under the strain. It was only a matter of time. Equipment breaks in other hands when it's meant to. Only true relics, like Nemesis, forged in the First Era with extraordinary durability and self-repair, could stand up to Li Wei's abuse. Empty-handed, Li Wei smiled and moved in. "I don't." "Catch!" Faludan's voice cut through. He tossed a brand-new sword to Li Wei, buying a breath for Arwen. Arwen's mind screamed, "My instructor!" The contest ended less with a final blow than with exhaustion. Arwen simply collapsed, spent beyond the point of contest. A hand reached down to help him up. "Well done, Legion Champion," Li Wei said. "Ergi." Arwen took the offered hand and struggled to his feet. "Lord's strength is unfathomable." "Isn't that obvious?" Li Wei replied. "Don't forget, I killed a dragon, a creature over 100 meters long, not a little thing. If he didn't have unfathomable strength, how could he face a dragon?" Arwen breathed. "You're right," Li Wei said. Arwen laughed softly. "Except at the very start, when I nearly drew even with you, the rest was just chasing and getting beaten." "You saw the rest," Ergi added from nearby. "If it were me..." "What do I think? Same as you. I couldn't have done better." Ergi exhaled. He hadn't won, but he hadn't been humiliated. He only had envy for the laurel wreath glittering on Arwen's head. Under the setting sun, the leaves looked like beaten gold. The champion earned his honors. The next day, Arwen wore a cloak patterned with green leaves, the unique emblem of the highest distinction. It had been a lively year, one that eased some of the long, soldierly loneliness. After the Legion's individual ability competition, each ranger was issued a personal emblem for identification. The flag was grassland green with a sharp blade at its center, matching the standard steel sword rangers carried. Once the emblem was fixed and flags produced, every ranger company gained a new standard bearer post to guard the honor of Roadside Fort's blade. It was a way to show the world that this unit, 10 years in the making, was no longer Roadside Fort's saplings. It was Roadside Fort's blade now. Li Wei stared at the old blank flag, his name stenciled on it, the same one the caravan still used and the same one at the school. It had become both his private mark and, absurdly, a symbol representing Roadside Fort, Riverside Stronghold, and even cities throughout the Free City States. "Time to design a new one," he muttered. After soliciting opinions, Li Wei settled on a proposal. The new emblem would put a flawless nether star at the center, ringed by countless smaller stars to represent territories and allies. That would serve as the Free City States emblem. Roadside Fort's flag would be a derivation of it, bordered with the little red flowers the Iron Golem occasionally handed out and the vines that decorated Li Wei's castle, vines he often used to clamber up and down from the windows. The River Valley shipyards and cities would use an emblem showing a river, a flagship, and the beacon beam above it. The plain flag with only Li Wei's name was retired. The new emblem, now widely circulated, became Li Wei's private insignia, usable only by him or those he authorized, or by those who simply didn't know better. Tabor's notebook even had a little box on its last page that once held Li Wei's name, what had been Roadside Fort's emblem. That day, Li Wei drew Roadside Fort's new emblem on the last page and finally wrote his name beneath it. "With this, I commemorate those who have passed," he wrote. Messages about the change were sent out. Apart from the territories Li Wei had personally founded, most places already had their own flags. River Valley and Long Lake Town were old settlements from before the Free City States. Great Road Town, founded more recently, got a simple emblem of a stopped flatbed cart, plain and fitting. River Valley, Long Lake Town, and Great Road Town had their own marks, and the whole River Valley administration used an emblem of a sword and a bow crossed over flames, the sword being the elven blade Li Wei used, the bow the Yu longbow bard used. Carltown, home to the Bayonne clan, had an emblem with a fat bee and a giant bear. There were many emblems, mostly used privately to distinguish territories. But the emblem representing the highest authority had changed. Li Wei's name was replaced by the more official Starry Emblem, a nickname that quickly caught on after the update. In River Valley, Bard poured tea several times over and handed a cup to Li Wei. "All right, it's redesigned now," Bard said. Li Wei took a long sip and sighed. The change settled a small worry. "Should have done it a long time ago," he said. Bard was bustling about, fetching biscuits, cakes, and almond milk candies, snacks Bane had loved as a child. Quite a lot to eat, he said, laying them out. Li Wei picked a few, tasting the purity of the flavors. Bane used to love these, but he's a proper warrior now, comes home less and doesn't eat these as much. Bard bit into one of the almond candies and raised his eyebrows. Fragrant. Li Wei took one too. As he chewed, he noticed a single white hair on Bard's head. Bard plucked it out and let it fall to the floor. Li Wei smiled, but the sight put a weight on him. Bard wasn't getting younger. Bane was over 30 now. Bane did well at Donglin Bend last year, Li Wei said casually. He earned the Outstanding Ranger Medal. Donglin Bend was the wasteland cleared from the Rovanian ruins in the Black Forest near Dol Guldur. When the Rangers explored the ruins, Bane spotted a nearby orc band, raised the alarm, organized the defense against their surprise attack, and then led the counterattack that cleared the area. Bard allowed himself a small, relieved smile. He's really grown up. That brought another matter to Bard's mind. About Donglin Bend, there's something I wanted to discuss. Li Wei leaned in. Go on. Bard rolled out a map and pointed. On the eastern side of the Lohan Northern Plateau are the Behi River Bend and the South River Set. Both lie in the Brown Lands. Historically, Gondor and Rohan used them as military transit points. If we take those positions, we could build an outpost in the ruins at Donglin Bend and use it as a foothold to expand south. He tapped the map. If things go well, we could open a new transport route linking River Valley, Carltown, Rohan, and Gondor. That would allow overland travel from River Valley all the way to Gondor, and Carltown could send ships along the Anduin to Rohan. It would also let us monitor movements in the Brownlands and keep an eye toward the Black Gate. Li Wei agreed immediately. Let's do it. Bard hesitated. They're on Rohan's border. Won't Rohan object? Li Wei shrugged. Their old king is dead. I know the new king, Sengel. He's a good man. At most, I'll ride over to greet him. You arrange things. Leave the rest to me, Li Wei continued. If the proposal is reasonable, I can make sure it won't meet obstacles. Bard relaxed visibly at that. The reassurance from Li Wei was enough. The plan to secure Behi River Bend and the South River Set, and with them a safer southern road, moved another step closer to reality. Chapter 275, Recovery. In the year 2958, a construction party set out from Grand Road Town for the ruins of the old Rovanian kingdom, near the place known as East Forest Bend. Their task was straightforward: repair what could be repaired and erect watchtowers. The work drew immediate attention from the woodland realm. It was impossible not to notice activity so close to the Black Forest. Humans had last lived here more than 15 centuries ago, when a band of Northmen planted the Rovanian kingdom. That kingdom endured for over 600 years through wars, alliances, growth, and finally collapse. From its ashes came several paths. Some of its people migrated south to become the Eorlings, ancestors of the Rohirrim, who would later aid Gondor and be granted the wide lands where Rohan stands today. Others moved north to establish Dale beside Erebor, a migration even recorded in Dwarven history. A few pushed farther still, settling along the Anduin or in Dorwinion. In short, many of the folk now living around places like Roadside Fort trace their roots back to Rovanian, and Li Wei felt a particular connection to the land's long memory. To the elves, 600 years passes like the briefest blink. Their priorities had shifted. They preferred retreat and preservation to entanglement in mortal affairs. Still, they could not fail to notice one lasting consequence of the Rovanian era. The east side of the Black Forest had been stripped of timber to build the human cities. A wide swath became a wasteland, East Forest Bend, littered with stumps and broken branches. The western rim of that scar came to be called the Black Forest Narrows, the place where the forest grew tightest against the cleared land. The elves were quietly dismayed. To live in a forest and watch a great part of it cut away was not something they took lightly, but there was little point lodging accusations against kingdoms long gone. So, when a group of humans returned after 1,000 years and began reworking the ruined capital, curiosity drew representatives of the Woodland Realm to the site. The deputy of the Woodland Realm was sent to make inquiries, and he was ordered to meet Li Wei. Li Wei received him with courtesy. After some small talk, the deputy got to the point. "You intend to establish an outpost here," he said, "to monitor the wilds and perhaps for expansion." You're not planning to fell the Black Forest again, are you? The deputy asked with a frankness born of history. Li Wei smiled. You have nothing to fear. I have seeds for every tree of the Black Forest. The deputy blinked. Seeds? Li Wei pointed to the boundary where the wasteland met the standing wood. There, in the ruined ground among stumps, new saplings were already pushing up, local species, vigorous and green. The wasteland was beginning to heal itself. Life was returning. The deputy's face opened with wonder. The forest is coming back. For a long moment, he could only stare at Li Wei. Then he found his voice. You are the first lord who has ever inspired such admiration in me. Under Li Wei's oversight, the pioneering crew set about repairing buildings and raising simple fortifications. Where stone walls and foundations were rebuilt, the devastated plain at East Forest Bend began, year by year, to cover itself with grass and saplings. It was easy to imagine the day when the name East Forest Bend vanished from maps and the phrase Black Forest Narrows would make way for a continuous forest once more. Elves sensed such things in their bones. It was the same perception that had made them the first to find companionship with the Ents. The Ents had not once spoken until the elves listened. By perceiving them, the elves coaxed from them the desire and ability to speak and to form a language of their own. Do not make too much of it, Li Wei told the deputy with a teasing edge to his voice, borrowing the cadence of elvish courtesy. I did not come here for this alone. It was only a convenient side task. After the meeting, Li Wei inspected the work in person to ensure nothing was amiss. Satisfied, he mounted his horse and rode south. He followed the river and took a boat down to the northern reaches of Rohan, the North Downs. This country was thinly settled compared to the great plains around Edoras. Small towns dotted the landscape rather than the busy settlements of the south. In one of those towns, he found a long avenue the locals called Volda Avenue. They told him that following the road south and crossing the second bridge would lead directly to Edoras. That's quite a stretch, Li Wei noted, looking at his map. To go from the North Downs to Edoras was to traverse the length of Rohan, from its northern edge to its southern heart. The road mattered. For traders, messengers, and any future caravans, it would make a long journey manageable. After a few years of travel and work, Li Wei returned to Edoras. Inside the great hall, the king, Sengel, sat with his brow knit in heated discussion with a circle of senior officials. Their meeting was tense when a guard burst through the doors. What's so urgent? Sengel demanded, frowning. The guard approached and whispered a few words into the king's ear. Sengel's expression changed at once. Very well, he said sharply. The meeting is adjourned. You may all withdraw. We shall reconvene tomorrow. The court dispersed, leaving the hall humming with confusion and unanswered questions. Chapter 276, Sudden Impulse, Li Wei. Outside the Golden Palace, Sengel called, breaking into a run toward him. Long time no see, you still look as well as ever. You too, Li Wei started politely, then trailed off when he saw how haggard Sengel looked. You seem worn out. I am. Sengel forced a smile and drew a breath. There's always so much to manage in Rohan. I finally cleared up a lot of lingering matters. The previous king left quite a mess, Li Wei said. You must have been busy. Sengel waved it off. It's mostly internal. The people of Rohan are surprisingly united now. After what happened before, they're more lenient toward me, and I've run into almost no resistance implementing orders. Heh, that's one of his few contributions, Li Wei murmured. He let the comment rest and asked instead, if things are going smoothly, what's making you look so worn? Sengel hesitated, then sighed. Internal affairs are one thing, but we're having trouble on the borders. The folk from the Black Lands have been working with the orcs. There's been ongoing harassment along the frontier for years. Oh? Li Wei raised an eyebrow. But weren't they quieter over the past year? Both the Blacklanders and the orcs pulled back suddenly. Very odd. Li Wei nodded as if checking things off in his mind. Peace inside and out sounds ideal. Anything else? Sengel hesitated a moment longer, then gave a rueful laugh. Peace inside and out, so now the court has turned on me. They've taken issue with my private life, because I use the Gondorian tongue too often, he said with a shrug. Did you give in? No. Let them talk. Li Wei didn't press further. What about you, Sengel? Anything else on your plate? Yes. Sengel listened as Liwei spread a map in the meeting hall and outlined the plans for the Nanhe River Bend and the Beihe River Bend across the northern plateau. Of course I support it. No one will object. I'll make the announcement. Sengel agreed quickly, without consulting Rohan's other nobles. He'd been under scrutiny for days. Any new business would shift their attention. Good, he said. With that settled, Liwei folded the map and rose. Sengel looked up, as if wanting to say more. Are you leaving? He asked. Yes, everything's arranged. I plan to visit other places. You always move so quickly. Sengel regarded him for a long beat, searching for words. Finally, the king gave a soft smile. Have a good journey. A few days later, Liwei arrived at the White City. He climbed to the palace's highest point and found Ecthelion in the prime minister's chair, Denethor standing nearby. Time moved on and faces changed. Liwei felt a twinge of emotion. How have you been? He asked. Better than ever, Ecthelion answered with a smile, stepping forward to shake his hand. Things have developed well these last years. Mordor has made few moves. I hope this lasts. In this era, peace was a rare blessing. Even Liwei's own lands only remained untroubled because the roadside fort's blades met threats before they reached the heartland. Their vigilance paid with quiet for others. Ecthelion seemed moved. So many years have passed. I envy you, Liwei. You can travel freely while I have to stay, watchful, preventing accidents even in peacetime. The three of them, Liwei, Ecthelion, and Denethor, moved to the garden. Over afternoon tea, they traded small talk. Liwei recounted the roadside fort's first Legion champion tournament, the champions' fight with him, Arwen's daring evasions and counterstrikes. Ecthelion was impressed by Liwei's strength. Even in his more vigorous years, he could at best be called skilled, not a champion. Denethor, meanwhile, was captivated by Arwen's techniques. Her maneuvers were exceptional, perhaps beyond the best of the Ethelian strike force. Their conversation turned to Rovanion, new outposts, and Liwei's plans for the Nani and Beihe river bends and a road connecting Rovanion directly to Gondor. When Liwei mentioned river and sea transport, Ecthelion's interest sharpened. I plan to strengthen Pelger's defenses and rebuild Calenardon, Ecthelion said. Calenardon, a small island in the Anduin north of the White City, was a key point against incursions from the east. Years earlier, Liwei had passed it when leading the roadside fort merchant caravan toward River Valley City. He remembered its riverine fortifications and the royal shipyard there. There's been a rise in piracy, Ecthelion added. We must prepare. Then let's go see it, Liwei suggested. Ecthelion's offer surprised Denethor, but he agreed. The next day, the three rode north toward the river island. Their inspection attracted little attention. It was taken as a routine territorial survey. They examined the defenses, made notes, and then, while they were still there, suddenly vanished. Chapter 27, Soup. A few days later, in Edoras, the capital of Rohan. The river environment is part of our inspection, and I am convinced this waterway can lead directly to Edoras. Its defense is therefore very important, Ecthelion said solemnly. Denethor hesitated, about to speak, but holding back. The three of them drifted along in separate flat boats, slowly moving down the river near Edoras. With Liwei between them, Denethor called from behind, Are you sure it's all right for us to do this? Don't worry, Denethor, Ecthelion replied loudly. Didn't I leave a note in Calenardon? You mean the one saying the three of us went to the wilds around the island to inspect? Denethor protested. The definition of around is a bit generous. It reached as far as Rohan, Liwei said mildly. When did you get so timid? Ecthelion teased. No, father. I just... All right. Since we're here, relax. Liwei cut off the argument between father and son. We can visit Sengel on the way. I know he misses life in Gondor. He often speaks Gondor's tongue at home. Is that so? Ecthelion's expression softened. Sengel's departure from Gondor had been only a few years before. His memories were still fresh. Gondor will remember his service. I am sure we will keep friendly ties. I believe so too, Liwei said with a small smile. Denethor, only in his early 20s, stared at the riverbanks and nodded absent-mindedly. He did not know what the future held. He only knew this land was beautiful in its own way. The flat, open plains nurtured the swift horses and cavalry Rohan was famed for, horses spirited and fine, even compared to those of roadside fort. Inside the Golden Hall, Sengel looked up in surprise when they arrived. Old friends, You all look worn, he greeted, and Ecthelion stepped forward first. Sengel admitted with a rueful smile, I have had vexing matters recently. I nearly left this place. We won't speak of that now. How did you come? Has Mordor launched another assault? Sengel asked. No, Ecthelion said, waving a hand. We came to survey the terrain around Calenardon and to inspect the river. This is Rohan, Sengel noted. You cannot deny the river runs here, Li Wei said. Then I should say it connects to Li Wei's lands as well, Sengel observed. Good, we can go see it together, Ecthelion agreed. Sengel hesitated, then smiled. It is indeed a good idea. They all looked to Li Wei. The three exchanged glances. Denethor, unaware of some shared understanding, felt a prick of foreboding. An inspection like this would surely take weeks. Fortunately, it was peacetime. Only in such relative calm could rulers travel so freely. Much of that peace, Denethor thought, was thanks to someone among them. 3 days later, near the North Downs, Sengel called out, Hey, look what I found! He stood on a small rise, no longer looking haggard but cheery, and held up a clutch of fresh mushrooms. Li Wei's face tightened, though Ecthelion and Denethor merely laughed and followed him. Sengel soon had a campfire going and water boiling in a pot. Let me cook. I'm not helpless in a kitchen. I learned this mushroom soup from Li Wei. Really? Then we're in for a treat, Denethor said, peering at the pile of fungi. Li Wei opened his mouth a few times as if to say something, then closed it. Smoke curled from the fire, and the pot gurgled as mushrooms and chunks of meat bobbed in a shimmering broth. The soup's ready, Sengel called. Ecthelion and Denethor hurried over and each ladled a bowl. Li Wei, however, had his back turned, fishing by the stream. Let the calls go unanswered. He was intent on his line. Ecthelion shrugged. Let him fish. I'm hungry. All right, I'll save him a portion, Sengel said, thoughtfully scooping another bowl and setting it aside to cool. Denethor, impatient, was the first to bring the soup to his lips, and burned them. He spluttered and coughed. What's wrong? Ecthelion asked, setting down his spoon before he'd sipped. Denethor took a deep breath and then said with a rueful calm, The soup's too hot. Remember to drink slowly, father. Ecthelion ruffled his son's shoulder and teased, You need patience. Learn from your uncles. Composure will help you in years to come. Yes, father, Denethor replied, watching his next move. Ecthelion solemnly blew on his spoon, tested the temperature, and then let a mouthful sit in his mouth. He put the bowl down, propped his chin on his hand, and looked out across the hills as if admiring the view. When he turned back, there were soup stains at the corner of his mouth. Denethor could not help but smile. Denethor, Ecthelion called suddenly, You eat first. I'll take the saved bowl to Li Wei. Father, I can go. Delivering the soup doesn't need 2 people. Stay and eat. Sengel watched Ecthelion walk toward the stream, amused. With the warmth of an elder, he said to Denethor, Your father is still very caring. He did the same for his soldiers. Status never mattered to him. He entrusted responsibility to the capable. That's worth learning, Denethor said. Then go on. Keep me company. Let me scoop you another bowl. Sengel held out the ladle in a kindly chide, and Denethor experienced, in that moment, the weight of elder affection. He swallowed the hot soup with effort and nodded slowly. After a while, Li Wei returned from fishing with 2 empty bowls and a few freshly caught fish. He set the fish beside the fire to roast and said, Soup alone won't feed 4. Let's add some fish. That suggestion was music to Denethor's ears. I'll help. Sengel reached to take a fish, but a hand stopped him. Please let me, Denethor said. You made the soup. Leave this to me. All right, you've learned to care for others, Sengel conceded, smiling as he withdrew his hand. The simple interlude passed, comfortable and domestic. 3 days later, they paddled across the Anduin and reached the Behi River bend in the desolate Brownlands, where Li Wei planned some construction. Ecthelion crouched and ran his hand over soil blackened by orc fires. In the previous age, our forebears fought here, he said quietly. Sengel and Denethor shared his solemn mood. Li Wei, meanwhile, moved a short distance away and began to lay out blocks. He set a campfire, placed a few oaken timbers horizontally beside it, and used a shovel to clear a circular patch of earth around the fire, carving a few grassy paths. In short order, a simple resting camp took shape. This camp would serve as a marker so that when the construction parties arrived later, they could work outward from a fixed point. Long ago, this spot had been a landing for Gondor's and Rohan's forces. Now it would serve again as a foothold, one day perhaps growing into a transit station with broader functions. Author's note: thank you for the 1,666 reading coins from You Guess, I Guess, You Guess, I Guess You Don't Guess. Thanks to reader 2018-08-28-21-15957 for the 100 coin reward. And thank you to everyone who voted. Thank you all. Chapter 278, Unknown Journey. On the Brown Lands, Leeway planted an oak and accelerated its growth. The Brown Lands were called that because life could not take hold there. Its vitality had been severed long ago, and even the hardiest weeds of Middle-earth could not survive. For thousands of years, no trees or plants had grown. After Donglin Bend was cut down, there had been stumps and sparse scrub, but here there had been nothing. Now, however, something green pushed up through the ash, pale, a little yellowed, almost sickly. Brown soil, a gray-yellow sky, and an oak with leaves the color of the biome. In game terms, this was simply how vegetation looked in this region. If a tree grew where the brown lands met the greener country, its leaves might be half yellow, half green. It was normal. After planting the oak, Leeway built a small house beside it for temporary lodging. He had just finished a wall when an arrow shot toward Ecthelion's chest. Denethor, sharp-eyed and quick, knocked it aside. A king and a prime minister might grow complacent from living indoors, but Denethor was different. He was in his prime, alert and swift. "Damn it," he muttered. Behind a low rise, an orc scrambled away too late. The brown lands offered wide visibility. Sauron had burned them to leave enemies nowhere to hide, and the arrow had revealed the direction of the shooter. "Enemy!" someone yelled. Ecthelion and Sengel drew their weapons and turned their eyes to the small hill. A shout went up, and a raiding party surged. Wargs and orcs poured from cover. 17 wargs and 15 orcs, Denethor counted at a glance. A standard raiding force. Denethor gripped his iron sword and felt a flare of alarm. If he had his full assault team, he would have attacked, but behind him were his aging father and his uncle Sengel of Rohan. The two men stepped forward as one, their calm replaced by a fierce edge, as if the world itself belonged to them. Denethor felt his chest tighten. "We may be older," Ecthelion said, "but we're not done yet." "Take note, child," Sengel added. An orc loosed an arrow. Sengel dodged it with practiced speed. As the orc prepared another shot, his eyes widened. Someone had leapt out from behind a ruined wall behind the three leaders. "Damn, how was he here?" A thought flashed through him. A voice called from behind, "I didn't come looking for you, but you walked into my path. Follow me." Leeway drew his sword and moved ahead of the three. "Charge," he shouted. Sengel followed, the others close behind. Together, legend, king, prime minister, and the prime minister's son, four figures surged forward like 1,000 men. Leeway's blade struck a warg's skull with the force of a hammer. The beast's skull caved and it flew backward, fur singed. The wargs faltered. The orcs saw the attackers clearly now. Perhaps they had heard the rumors but never seen him before, yet the aura around Leeway chilled them to the bone. Orc nemesis. Leeway plunged into the raiders. Wargs and orcs rose to meet him, fire and fury, then fell. The three leaders cut down the rest on the flank. Sengel and Ecthelion were veteran commanders who had led men in battle. Denethor, now a commander in the White City, was no slouch either. The skirmish ended quickly. When the last orc tumbled, Ecthelion suddenly knelt, clutching his side, breathing hard. Blood had seeped through his tunic. "Father!" Denethor rushed to him. "I'm getting old," Ecthelion laughed, wincing. He was over 70. His pride and his son's presence had driven him to fight beyond caution. They had rushed out lightly armored and unprepared. Leeway handed Ecthelion a bottle of healing potion. The old man drank, then pressed his hand where the wound had been. "Much better," he sighed. That was a long-awaited bit of exercise. As the sun set, the four sat around a fire, roasting meat and sharing a barrel of cold ale that Leeway produced as if from nowhere. It was a good evening. Over the next month, they traveled the old Rovanian road. They visited outposts and Great Road Town, went on to Long Lake Town and River Valley City, and witnessed the prosperity of Erebor. Bard and Thorin were astonished by what they saw, but honored their duties and hospitality. From there, they took the Sky Road west to Carl Town to see the square-shaped giant bees, and in the evening they squatted on Carrick with Bjorn, who had taken the form of a giant bear, and watched the moon in companionable silence. They continued to Roadside Fort, the tall golden tree, a tower that seemed to pierce the clouds, and the dazzling grand library within all left deep impressions. Legion champion Arwen happened to be there. Denethor challenged him boldly. The young champion complimented Denethor afterward. He had fought well and lasted a time, almost on par with the best Dunedain in Arwen's old company, yet Denethor could not help feeling he had room to improve. The Rangers taught him much, and he left more balanced in his mind. Their route ended at Riverside Stronghold. The four boarded a practical-grade flagship that Leeway had personally built, one of the largest craft of its kind in the age. Sengel, from the plains with little experience of ships, was awed. Ecthelion and Denethor felt other, more bittersweet emotions as they thought of Gondor's former fleets. The splendor of Riverside Stronghold steeled Ecthelion's resolve to pursue certain policies. Pelargir and Calenardhon both needed stronger defenses and construction. At the month's end, they turned homeward. Passing the entrance to Isengard with some fanfare set Saruman in Orthanc to worrying. When word reached him, his eyes widened, and he glanced south to the garrison at Isengard, fearing his schemes had been discovered and that these important figures had united against him. In the end, it was a false alarm, and no move came from that quarter. The journey, neither overly long nor brief, was done. Sengel returned to the Golden Hall of Rohan to continue his reign. Ecthelion and Denethor rode back toward the White City, looking as if they had just completed a thorough inspection of the borderlands. Peace, for the time being, held. In the year 2958, Li Wei visited Rohan and Gondor, discussing road and border matters with their rulers. He and Ecthelion surveyed terrain around Calenardon, and Sengel and Li Wei traveled as far as the northern plateau to inspect Volda Avenue. But official records from both realms were oddly inconsistent. Rohan kept notes of a visiting Gondorian prime minister that Gondor itself did not acknowledge, while River Valley and the Lonely Mountain had records of visits that were unfamiliar to both courts. Only those directly involved and a few trusted confidants knew the true itinerary of that year, and much of what transpired remained known to only a handful. The new year had arrived. In the second year of the king's journey, spring saw the old Rovanian outpost completed. The place once known as Donglin Bend was reclaimed by green, gaps in the forest filled, saplings and undergrowth taking hold, and the world map received an update. The Black Forest was whole. Those redrawing the map did not yet understand a rule that would soon become obvious. When a certain great lord made a move, the map changed very fast. After finishing the outpost, the construction corps pushed south along the old Rovanian road, refurbishing it in the style of the Free City States so that any traveler could tell at a glance where it led. Mid-year, the workers discovered a small bonfire clearing, a lone tree with yellow leaves, and a tiny house on the bend of the North River. "This is it, the mark left by the Lord," someone said. They built around the camp. Facilities and workshops sprang up quickly. In time, the spot became a settlement of some size, but it was utilitarian above all, geared toward transport and engineering rather than market life. It was perfectly livable, with decent conditions, but lacked the bustle and color of other towns. When the North River settlement reached a certain scale and construction of a bridge to the Rohan Northern Plateau began, the commotion drew orcs. They watched the place for a time, and when they were certain the Lord himself was not present, some of them plotted a raid. "Civilians everywhere, no troops," one snarled, "just builders and road crews." "Let them build in my belly," another jeered. "I'm sick of it. Kill." They struck by night, expecting an easy slaughter. What they found instead was a construction team that discarded its tools and with startling speed donned helms and mail. The workers became soldiers, the project manager became a commander. What had looked like a camp of civilians was a disciplined force. The orcs were the ones screaming that night, "Retreat! Retreat! It's a trap!" "A trap," the provisional commander replied, shaking his head. "No, it's the most basic quality of a resident of the Free City States. All units, hear my command. Counterattack!" They drove the orcs back, hunting them past the South River encampment and stopping only at the ragged hills by the Pillars of the Kings. The terrain there was unsuitable for pursuit. Beyond those hills lay the dead marshes, too perilous to chase further. "Withdraw," the commander ordered, and the engineering force pulled back. The orcs were stunned. What kind of people were they? Orc intelligence quickly updated. Any attack on a resident of the Free City States must be handled as a formal campaign. Treat every resident like a trained soldier. After that clash, the orcs kept their distance. By year's end, the North River Bend had been incorporated into the territory and developed into a walled town with defensive works. Trees were planted inside and around it. From a distance, it looked like an oasis, lush and green, if a bit yellow-tinged. The bridge to the Rohan Plateau was finished, and work began on the camp at the South River Bend. Someone proposed new names. The North River Bend should be called Hebai City, and the South River Bend Henan City. Leeway, sipping his tea when the suggestion reached him, almost choked. The renaming was quietly shelved. The proposer could not understand why their popular idea was rejected. In 2960, the South River Camp was completed, and a major river road connected the two small cities. The road linked north to the old Rovanian Road and on to River Valley City. To the south, the bridge led straight to the northern plateau, where Volda Avenue ran all the way to Rohan's capital. The stout bridge that joined the plateau and the river settlement came to be known simply as the North Bridge. Crossing the North Bridge put travelers into Rohan's territory. Construction there proved easier because many things were already established. Once the bridge opened, the barrier between Rohan and the northern reaches was broken. Caravans began to flow. They crossed the bridge, climbed the plateau, stopped at towns across Rohan, and then followed Volda Avenue south to the capital. Word spread fast. Even people who had never traveled abroad learned to take Volda Avenue to the North Bridge. Beyond it lay one of the Free City States. With the two new settlements and the old Rovanian outpost, Leeway's domain now stretched from River Valley City to the edge of the Brownlands. The Free City States added a new administrative district, Rovanian, covering the strip east of the Black Forest and the two towns in the Brownlands. Alongside the Anduin Valley, River Valley District, roadside forts, and riverside strongholds, the territory now rivaled Gondor and Rohan in size, and without anyone noticing at first, had already exceeded them. In terms of land, the Free City States had become the largest human power in Middle-earth. Leeway acquired a new title, Lord of the Northern Territory. The northern peoples lived more securely and prospered. His allies benefited too, freed from many material shortages. His prestige had grown so high that a few whispered the name High King of the North, though Leeway himself showed no interest in a coronation, so the nickname remained private. "This is comforting," Thranduil murmured in the woodland realm as he studied the new map. East of the Black Forest and west of Dorwinion was all Leeway's. To the north lay Great Road Town, Long Lake Town, and River Valley City. To the south stood the stout Rovanian outpost, as strong defensively as many full cities, and the three heavily armed towns on the southern river bend that barred the road. Any force from Mordor or the Easterlings would have to take at least 3 of those 6 formidable cities before it could threaten the Black Forest or Erebor. And nearby allies would not sit idle. Black Forest forces, Erebor, Rohan, the Iron Hills, support would arrive astonishingly quickly, often within days. If an enemy failed to seize a city immediately, they would soon find themselves surrounded by trouble. Chapter 280, Probing in 60, Behe River Bend. Leeway, I really think the names Hebe and Henan are perfect. They suit the geography and the character of the lands, Bard muttered by the riverbank. They're simple, but they carry weight. If you keep repeating that, I'll get annoyed, Leeway said, sitting on a small stool with his back to Bard, fishing. All right. Bard sighed and gave up. No matter how he tried, he couldn't see what was so objectionable about the names. Since our Lord of the North has spoken, of course I'll obey. Hearing that title made Leeway shiver. People loved inventing grand titles. This one fit the situation surprisingly well. If you wanted to, you could just crown yourself High King of the North, and no one would complain, Gandalf said. You don't have to worry about that, Bah. Leeway began, then stopped and turned. A gray-robed old man stood behind him, having appeared without anyone noticing. Plop. Li Wei tightened the line and pulled in a salmon. He tossed it into the bucket filled with fish. "Nice day for it," the old man said, taking a seat beside him. "Good afternoon." "Nice day?" Li Wei and Bard looked up. The sky was a wash of gray-yellow clouds, filmy and dirty. The sun showed only as a dull glow behind a thin veil. This was the norm in the Brownlands. No clear skies, no bright sunlight. That scorched, sullied air let orcs move across the land with ease. It was all part of Sauron's design. The burning of the land had produced exactly this world. Gandalf smiled. "I believe the clouds will clear." "They might someday," Li Wei said without expectation. Around the two river cities, trees and grass stretched far, but the land itself felt dead. Apart from the special plants Li Wei had introduced, little else could grow here. A thought struck him. If the native soil couldn't support life, he could transplant grass blocks from elsewhere, shovel off the top layer, replace it with fertile soil, put down grass blocks, and let them spread. He made a mental note and added it to his to-do list. Gandalf nodded. "By the next time I visit, I expect to see two very different cities." "Something to look forward to," Li Wei replied. After the brief talk about the land, Gandalf returned to the subject he'd hinted at earlier. "Have you considered it, becoming the High King of the North, leading the other lords? It's a title many rulers would die to hold." The title of High King belonged to rulers who governed beyond a single tribe. It implied tremendous dignity, the sort of title Manwë, chief of the Valar, possessed. High King of Arda. "I could place the crown on you. You could be the only High King in Middle-earth." His words had a soft, tempting quality, and even Bard looked caught up in the reverie. To be the only High King in Middle-earth, what an honor. "If I wanted it, would I need your help?" Li Wei asked simply. That one line broke the spell. Gandalf blinked, then pouted. All right. You don't need me." The old wizard straightened as if to leave, then paused and turned back. "Really not even considering it?" "I have no interest in such titles. We can talk about it later." "Very well." Gandalf sat back down with a chuckle, dropping his earlier indignation. "You're the same as always, completely indifferent to power." "Power?" Li Wei shook his head. "It does nothing for me. I don't crave it. If I had to give a reason, it would be no interest." Gandalf lit his pipe and with a twinkle called him Lord of the North, Lord of almost all the lands of the North, Li Wei. "That suits him well, too," Bard said approvingly. Gandalf's tone was warm rather than persuasive. "But if you ever decide you want it, I'll support you." Plop. Li Wei pulled up another fish, a pufferfish, swelled like a balloon. He held it up and dangled it in front of Gandalf. "This thing's stronger than the fiercest wine. Want me to grill you one?" "Oh, really? You should save such a delicacy for yourself. An old man like me wouldn't enjoy it," Gandalf said, leaning back. "What a shame." Li Wei couldn't stomach wasting it. It could be used as medicine. Soon his fishing was done. He built a small bonfire, laid the catch on a spit, and roasted the fish. When they were done, Gandalf picked up the nearest one, blew on it twice, and took a bite. It was delicious. He ate a few more bites, paused, and then said, "I didn't expect you to claim even the Brown Lands. For thousands of years, they've been an orc paradise." "They won't be happy anymore," Li Wei said. "Indeed," Gandalf agreed. "The orcs' roaming grounds have shrunk. Once their numbers were seen across the wilds of Rovanion. But now this is no longer the great wilderness. It's a claimed land." In a sense, the kingdom of Rovanion was being reborn, though less as a kingdom and more as an administrative region or province. Looking at the map now, Gondor, Rohan, and the Free Cities formed an iron wall of free men, holding back Mordor and the looming threats from east and south, preserving the peace of the lands behind them. Sauron must be frustrated, though the fight was far from over. Gandalf watched Li Wei sprinkle seasoning on Bard's fish as Bard took a satisfied bite. After the meal, Li Wei and Bard stepped aside to discuss plans for greening the land, while Gandalf sat, seasoning in hand, eyeing the fire with fondness. "Ents," Gandalf said suddenly. Li Wei knew what he meant. Ents, the tree herders of Fangorn, stood rooted like trees and often fell into long slumbers, some for thousands of years. Some never woke again and simply became trees. They were immensely powerful, stronger than ogres, mightier than great beasts. They could crush rock and bend iron as if it were twigs. Ogres had been crude imitations of Ents, just as orcs were twisted copies of elves. The difference was vast. Gandalf continued, I know this isn't your main purpose, and you may not even have noticed, but good deeds have echoes. The Ents will feel your work through the earth, he said. They will be glad.